welcome everybody to the Saint Seiya Cosmocast. I am your host Ramses, and per usual, I am not alone here. We have Kamen Rider Furry,
Hello.
and we got Benjas.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, so as per usual, it's the three of us here. Three of us here. We're fine. We're doing good. So let's do a little bit of housekeeping before we start the episode. If you notice, for the last couple of episodes, we've been following this new CGI show, and as much as we're liking what we're seeing so far, we realized that today would have been the day that episode 12 would have dropped, and that would have been like where we would that would have been like our next block of episodes. But we kind of decided after last episode, Kamen Rider Furry brought up a really valid point of like if like we're not gonna have time to like digest all that and have time to record that episode in time. So what we decided, we called an audible. We called this audible to do something else, and that something else is that we're gonna review the second movie. The discussion for the last block of episodes 11 to 14, 11 not 11, 9 to 12 will happen in the following episode. Will happen in the following episode, episode 22. So for now, we are going to discuss the second movie. Which, if you haven't seen the second movie, so for those of you living in the United States, it's everywhere. It's on Retro Crush. It's on Amazon. I believe it's also on Tubi. So if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend it. It's on a lot of streaming services here in the United States for free, or if you got to pay for a subscription for it as well. So if you haven't watched it, give it a shot. When we get to the review, like we have some interesting thoughts on the movie, and because we have a lack of news, we're also gonna take a look at the manga that we were discussing the other day as well. What's the name of it? You remember anyone?
Rerise of Poseidon?
Yeah, the Rerise of Poseidon. I should have had that in my notes. Okay, so yeah, but we're gonna be discussing that as in lieu of having an actual news report. So we're having two reviews. We're gonna have a review on Rerise of Poseidon and of the second Saint Seiya movie. And like I said, if like this might be a short show, but that's fine. It just means we're gonna have a little bit more banter. So if you're into the banter and all that stuff, you're in the right place. So why don't we get started by talking about the Re-Rise of Poseidon?
Already.
So where do you guys want? Who wants to? Let's start off first with Benjas. You helped us out translating it for us. Like, what were your initial thoughts of it?
Already. Yes. Well, my initial thoughts of it is like I'm really liking it. Of course, this is like the very first chapter. We still have to wait until the next chapters get published to see how the story advances. But the premise and the way that it is presented, I am really liking it. It is very reminiscent to me of of Kurumada's own style. Like every single author that works on a spinoff, they give they always partake from like they begin from one idea that usually they discuss with Kurumada himself, and then Kurumada gives them like liberty to do as they please as the story progresses, so long as they adhere to certain topics that I think he gives them in the beginning, and from there he gives them total liberty. This is like the very first chapter where we get introduced to the new villain, which is the goddess Nemesis. She's the Greek
Yes.
goddess of divine vengeance, as among other things. We'll mention it later. And I really like the Nemesis, and so far the premise looks pretty good. The I was wondering what exactly they were gonna do, if they were gonna just use Sorrento and maybe bring in new characters to inherit in a way the scales of the seven Marina generals. But that's not how it goes. They bring back the original ones, and the way that they do it is perfectly. It makes perfect sense. They decide to give even Hades, because he's the one that basically allows those characters to return from the dead, so that they can aid Poseidon in stopping
Mm.
this new menace that's coming to Earth. And I thought that it was perfectly logical, perfectly reasonable, and perfectly in character, while giving them a little bit of a new light as to how it was done. And in the end, the ones that steal the show are Kiki, Shaina, and Sorrento, and I really liked it.
Yeah,
Kamen Rider
the
Furry,
template.
I was gonna say Kamen Rider Furry, your initial thoughts.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just about to say it's such an unlikely duo, Kiki and China. I can't remember them ever extensively interacting before, unless it was during the Hades chapter, which I famously know very little about because of my history of trying to get a hold of it. So yeah, unless they just really got close in that arc, it just seems very weird to me that they're paired together here. But I love any excuse to get to see both of the characters because they're weirdly kind of my favorites. So maybe they're fan favorites, and I also really like Sorrento, and I really like Poseidon and all of the Marinas. So like, I just feel like this manga was like, they're like, hey KRF, here's a bone, take it. The new villain now, I'm a little bit perplexed because in the color, so their first picture for the chapter is this beautifully drawn color image, and in the color
Mhm.
image she only looks slightly darker. The new villain, why am I blanking on her name?
Nemesis.
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 Every time I think of Nemesis, I think of Sailor Moon because of Planet Nemesis. Sorry.
There you go.
Um,
If you there you go.
but
Take a drink, guys.
in the in the full picture, she's a little bit darker skinned, but she still looks very Caucasian.
Mhm.
But when you look in the actual manga panel, she's like shaded much darker than everybody else, and it looks like she might have been a POC or intended to be a POC of some kind because her skin looks it uses the screening technique that they use in manga a lot to do different scales of gray. So she's
Yeah.
obviously intended to be darker skinned. So it weirds me out a little bit that in the color photo she looks basically just as pale as every other character, but in the black and white images she looks darker. But either way, she's a complete and total queen, and I am loving her. I love the angel wings that contrast to her like being this goddess of destruction basically. That's that's not exactly what she's the god of, but she's like the god of like divine retribution and
Yes.
justice. And so I'm guessing that the storyline that is gonna develop is that she thinks that she's doing the right thing because she's the god of basically vengeance and justice, and so she probably thinks that she's doing the right thing, but is gonna unintentionally be horrible or whatever is what I'm guessing. It's kind of what I gathered from this, but I really like her is what I'm trying to say, and I love the return of all the Marinas. They're probably my favorite group of villains. I'm sure everybody can just guess by glancing which one's my favorite. The big one. But
Oh God, I have
Krishna.
something. Yeah.
I love all of them though. But
Yeah.
Sorrento, Krishna is aesthetically my favorite. Personality wise, though, Sorrento is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
based
He's
off of who he. But yeah, I very much enjoyed the first chapter a lot more than I thought that I would because I was worried that me having more limited knowledge, like I've obviously like looked up Wikipedia pages and looked up stuff online about the Hades arc, but I've never sat down and watched or read it myself because it was so hard to find for a long time. And it's kind of, we'll get to it when we get to the movie, but I was kind of in the same boat with this movie that I was with reading this. So this is just a very weird episode for me personally. But to the point, like I was worried that since it picks up almost immediately where the Hades chapter left off, that I'd be a little bit in the dark as to what's going on. But they do a pretty good job of explaining everything and getting people reacquainted to the continuity and where in the timeline we are. I just think it's
yeah.
fantastic.
I was gonna say like one of the good points that you brought up is that it tells you what's going on without giving you the full spoiler of what's going on. That's why I think I found.
Right.
That's why that's one of the things that was one of the things I wrote here in my notes that you just brought up. That for someone like you've not seen it. You've only had a brief glimpses of Hades. Like me and Benkas, we know what's going on, and I read the manga. Benkas read the manga. We watched OAVs, so we know what's going on too. But it's interesting. It's like they tell you what's going on in the manga itself, like where they are, but they don't tell you exactly what they're doing. They'll tell you, okay, this is what happened, and without really giving you more of an explanation. And I do appreciate that if you're going in cold, if you don't know what's going on with Saint Seiya, or rather you don't know what's going on with Saint Seiya, like post Poseidon, you have a general idea what's going on, but you don't have like the 100% like spoiler version of it. You only get like
Right.
the surface version that only relevant to this information that's being presented to you. My opinions so far is that I was surprised by it. Going back to what Benka said, he said that the art reminded a lot of Kuromada, and I said there, I put down my notes that like the art is amazing. If like Kuromada has to retire at any point, give this person the art, give this person the mantle. This person can totally mimic his style. I really appreciate that they're doing that they're mimicking the style in such a way that it's like I almost completely forgot it was someone else. And what I like is that, and I love that a lot. It's like it's really aesthetically really pleasing. I really love it. Let's see here. Another parts of my notes. Yeah, it's another thing is it's weird. It's weird and really great to see Kiki and Shina in the beginning of this because like they're a pair we don't really see that much at all in the series, and seeing them do more than just stand there or them doing things on their own. And teaming up was a really good idea as well. Um,
Can I just say before we move on from the artwork that I wanted to specifically call out page 23 where Sorrento is using the Dead End Symphony, like that
Oh yeah.
artwork is
Oh, yeah.
beautiful. It just looks so amazing. Like I almost wish that was like a 2-page photo so that it would work better as like a desktop background or something like that. But I'm sure
I think
this
it
new
was.
Photoshop genius. No, the second photo. I guess you could put the second photo up next to it, but I don't think they connect perfectly, do they?
No, I'm actually looking at them, and even though it is intended to like simulate that it's a continuation from the page, it is a different one.
Interesting.
Yeah, they don't line up exactly, so I don't. It would take some photoshopping to get it to line up to look really, really nice. But man, that it's just beautiful. And then the 2-page from the very end where it shows all of the generals back to life looks really, really good too. And it does really look like Kurumada's artwork. Like it gives the same vibe without looking like a cheap copy. It gives that very distinct Saint Seiya manga feel to it.
Yeah, the thing that I love about the style is that okay, yeah, you can clearly see the influence from Kurumada there, but at the same time, you can also see that it is different enough to stand on its own and to
Mhm.
see that it is this author's style as well. So it's like a very weird, very weird thing, and I suppose that it depends on who you ask, like what they would tell you about it. I personally love it. I like the fact that it both emulates the style of Kurumada himself as well as giving it its unique spin because I think all the characters look fantastic. Like the female characters look gorgeous. Kiki looks just like Kiki, and Sorrento
Mhm.
is, despite the fact that he looks like his manga self, there's also a little bit of a more stylized touch to it that it looks fantastic. I really like the
There's
artwork.
He
something
looks
I real something
softer.
I'll go on. First, you
I
finish
was just
first.
say Sorrento looks softer to me than his
One
original.
one of the things talking about one of the things that caught my attention and I wrote here on my notes is that I love the attention to continuity that I don't think you guys noticed this or maybe you guys did is that Sorrento's clock looks exactly how it was right before the end of like right at the end of Hades. Like it's broken into the same parts and everything else. I'm like that is really interesting that they paid that the artist paid that much attention to the detail to like make it look like Sorrento how he looked right after right as Hades right as the Poseidon arc ended. Like it broke it in the same parts and everything. It blew my mind when I realized I was like, oh, like I thought I heard because I was looking through the pages and I didn't get it didn't get caught my brain till we got to the point where we're introduced to Nemesis.
Yeah.
And when it got to there, I was like, did that part of the armor break during the fight? Because like they get assaulted in the at the beginning when Sorrento's introduced. And no, I looked at the page like, oh, it's he looks like this when he comes out. And then I started like looking through like reference pictures of like the other parts of the manga, and that's exactly how he looked like when at the very end of Poseidon. So that kind of blew my mind that they're really paying attention to continuity like that. Like those little touches caught my attention really, really good.
Yeah, now that you touch upon that, there's two things about that I think
Go
are
on.
fantastic. The first is that yes, this is a continuation from what happens there because at the end of the fight against Poseidon in the Poseidon arc, the Shun, while he doesn't completely destroy the scale of Sorrento, he does damage it quite a bit. And as you say, it's exact the damage that Shun gave to Sorrento. It's that exact same damage that's present here because this is supposed to be like a continuation of what would happen afterwards, like right after Hades finishes, and to tell this story. And another interesting aspect that, like, one of the things that is like very unique to the clots of Athena, of the army of Athena, is that they can heal themselves if they are left in their Pandora's box or if they are manually repaired by someone else. But they do have that ability so long as they're not killed to repair themselves. That is an ability that it has been implied in other extended media that none of the other armies possess, that they have to be manually restored. And that would fit right in with that because like there hasn't been
Mhm.
any that like there couldn't have been any incident where Sorrento's scale would have been repaired, and for that matter, the scales of the other marinas as well. And that's present here. So at least in this universe, that idea it's like the established status quo for them.
All right. Career for your thoughts? Like, well, everything so far?
I don't know. I can't get over Nemesis. How much I love her. I
Well, why,
I
why, why,
did my
why,
best
why,
not to
why,
look.
why don't
Go
you
ahead.
expunge? I was gonna say, why don't you expunge for a little bit for us? Because, yeah, I really enjoyed Nemesis. I wrote down here a couple of notes here. It's like, yeah, Nemesis is finishing the job for the three other gods didn't finish, and
She's
that and
got very and I don't have any other word. She's got very like mommy energy, like almost she seems like almost she could be like a dominatrix a little bit because she just loves like she gets so much joy out of like seeing people that she hates suffer, and it just makes me think of that mommy sorry, like that's what it makes me think
Bayonetta,
of.
I
just
very,
Bayonetta.
very Bayonetta.
I want to compliment
Yeah.
what you just said because I'm actually also in the Discord server for the Wikia in Spanish. And once the first image of her got released, and especially that of the panel where she's sitting with her legs crossed on the throne, like
Yes.
there were a couple, there were quite a few responses that said, "Step on me, please."
That's the vibe that I get, and it's that specific panel that made me feel that way too. That where it's like
Whoa,
it looks
whoa,
like
whoa.
the point of view of somebody like kneeling before her. Oh, because they are kneeling before her, I
Yeah,
guess.
they are. They are.
And it's like this like upward angled photo, and it's just like she's gonna be stepping on people, and they want her to.
And I was
And
going back to the point that you were saying about like how if she's like if she's like dark skinned or not. It's like it where like is that you can see it's like the light is like I think what why your brain is thinking that is because when you see that panel because like, that's the first time we actually see Nemesis. It's like the light is blinding it like you can see the light shining behind her but it's like it's blinding everybody see that's that image that they're seeing from their perspective, from Kiki, Sorrento, and from China's side of things.
Well, she has that same screening on her in all of the panels that she's in, not just that one.
Yeah, well, okay. And like I said here,
Like
we
on
were.
picture 32, she still is very dark skin looking, but in the color image, she's like pale as can be. But I
Or
guess
must be.
not
It must.
pale as can be, but not the skin tone I was thinking. So it's a little bit weird.
Fair
Like
enough.
I wonder if this was sent to like a specific colorist, and maybe there was just some communication, like or lack of communication, I guess, on
Or
the
they
part of
don't.
the person that colored it.
Or maybe they're like, you know what? Like, or maybe they're like, you know what? Maybe this works better if they had darker skin. Like it's something like again, Occam's razor. When it comes to these things, think Occam's razor. Like the most simplest, most simplest of answer is the right answer. So I'm pretty sure they're like,
Well,
you know, let's
it's
just
just
let's just
weird
make it.
because like they have dark skinned people. There's not a lot, but there are some dark
Yeah,
skinned people. Like Cassius had kind of a dark skin. Krishna has dark skin. So like it's not like it's unheard of in this franchise. And but just in the manga panels, she looks gorgeous. And I'm just not as
yeah,
big of a fan of that color image from the very first page.
fair enough.
But
Well,
she
then
just
again, too, it's
gives
like,
very Queen Nehelenia energy. I think that's why that
yep, take another
that's why
drink.
I keep thinking, but I'm saying that's why I think I keep flashing back to Sailor Moon is that not only does she have the name Nemesis, which is a planet from Sailor Moon where evil people live, but also she kind of has that Queen Nehelenia energy. She's got the long flowing hair. She's potentially like she's apparently this powerful like bad bitch that's been around for millennia, but we're just now hearing about her for some reason in like the final bits of the story. I don't know. I really really like her as a villain, and I'm glad that because I was also wondering how they were going to deal with the marinas being dead. Like
Yeah,
didn't know what they were going to do with that. So I'm glad that they didn't find other users to use the cloths or whatever. I'm glad that they went with bringing them back because they're the most iconic villains to me because I don't really consider the Gold Saints to be villains, and we've had that discussion many times about if they're villains or not. So like out of the like straight up people that they have to fight against and stuff, I think the Marinas were my favorite.
All right. Benjas, you want to start off a little bit with the story itself, or is there anything else you want to bring up?
Sure, I'll give a synopsis of what happens in this chapter. Okay, so basically the story for this spin-off goes the following. After the Saints of Athena kill Hades, basically, well, a huge spoiler for in case nobody has like seen how the story ends in the manga as well as the original anime. The Saints of Athena are able to defeat Hades. They kill him and they destroy Elysium and the underworld. So this story is taking place right after that, like in a very short span amount of time after that just happened, because Hades actually, before he completely disappears, he comes to see Poseidon, his soul being trapped in his trident at Cape Sunion, and he asks for his aid because he foresees that the goddess Nemesis, or in this case, he doesn't name her, but he knows that there will be enemies that will come to try to destroy Earth. And the reason why he's doing that is because the intention of Hades wasn't to destroy Earth itself, but was merely to wipe out humanity so that he could rule over them. It's about domination, not destruction. So that's the argument that he gives Poseidon as to why he's helping him and humanity in that regard. So he brings back the 6 dead Marina generals. Also, he also brings back Gemini Cannon in this case to fulfill his role as the Marina General of Sea Dragon. So he's going to appear in this story as well.
That's the part that got me. Like I was like, really? Like, you actually brought him back? It's like, wow, okay.
Yeah, that's gonna be very interesting. But that happens like at the very end. Like he goes to see Poseidon and he tells him what's to come. Poseidon, then like in that time frame while Poseidon is starting to awaken, Shaina and Kiki go to inspect because before that the goddess Nemesis returns to Earth because precisely what happened by the humans killing Hades and Hypnos and Thanatos, the gods of Elysium. She considers this to be like the ultimate sin, like the ultimate crossing of the line for humanity. And she decides to finally bring judgment upon them. And she starts to bring down fireballs all over the world, and worldwide SOS alert is risen. So the Saints discover that her temple has risen once again in the region of Attica in Greece. So they go to investigate. Well, Shaina and Kiki go to investigate. Alongside the way, they find Sorrento, but then they get captured by the army of Nemesis. At this moment, they haven't been named. They haven't been given like a name for this particular army yet. So we'll have to wait and see for the next chapter to see if they get finally given a name. But anyway, they get captured by them and they get taken in front of Nemesis, where she explains that precisely due to this reason of the humans being arrogant, selfish, and rising against the gods, she's going to bring down judgment upon them. Then like as they try to fight back, but obviously they get defeated quite quickly and easily, and just as about they're gonna get killed by the enemies, Poseidon rescues them and brings them to Cape Sunion, where the dead Marina generals have already gathered alongside Julian Solo, now in the awakened form of Poseidon, and that's where the chapter ends.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. It's like that also too. They kind of address what's going on with like Julian's. Like at first they're like, at first Sorrento's like, but what about Hades? Oh, don't worry. He's me. Don't worry. I wrote down here. Oh, good guy Julian, because he's with like orphans and stuff like that, like doing his own thing. And Sorrento's like, he's doing his own thing. I'm not gonna interfere on this. But and then at the very end, like he's already awakened again, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. So it's like, I want to say he had like it's interesting that's like he didn't get a change. Poseidon didn't get a change of heart. He was more like, okay, this is what I really wanted to do. It's not. I didn't want to kill anybody. I didn't want I wanted to take over this place because like I felt like this was that Athena wasn't doing her job and I wanted to just take it over. But and right now without anybody protecting the Earth right now because like we figured out in the manga like later on, or rather, very early on, the Athena and the rest of the Bronze Saints are not there. So like at this point, it's like you know what? Fine, fuck it. I'll help out. I'll help out just this once. So he's he's not doing this begrudgingly, but he's like, nobody else right here. I might as well just like squat here for a little bit and just see what happens, and fight off whatever evil is coming up. So it's really interesting. It's interesting in that regard, and also seeing Hades come back. Julian. Well, not. It's interesting to see Poseidon come back. In Julian's body again, because like we only, because apparently wasn't it Kuromada? He said like we'd only seen like a fraction of his power.
Yes, because Poseidon, like if you remember the Poseidon saga, like he just starts to awaken fully right at the very end, but he hasn't completely awakened. That's why it's relatively easy for Saori to imprison him again, because he hasn't completely woken up. So you could say that we haven't really seen the full extent of his power yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So go back to my notes here. So yeah, so one of the things that caught my attention was like is seeing Nemesis' plan. She's like literally, I put down here, we Majora's Mask now, because apparently she's like yeah. Apparently they look up and they're saying, wait a minute, is that the moon? No, why is it like, oh my god, that is a comet. And she said like, yeah, I'm gonna rain down in 10 hours. I'm gonna rain this huge comet onto Earth. And once this baby hits the Earth, it's gonna split all over the place, and then I'm gonna destroy this entire planet just because I want, because the humans have to find the gods for one last too many times. I also wrote down here. I think you heard me say that. Now this is finishing the job that 3 other gods couldn't do at this point.
You gotta give Kuromada props in that his villains don't waste any time. Like they always come with extreme small time limits. Like their plan is not to destroy the world eventually. It's like 10 minutes, the world's gonna be gone. Like you better hurry up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we forgot to mention that because the time frame that she has given, like before, like the idea is that there's a huge asteroid that's going to impact the Earth. Like it's going to blow up into millions or thousands of pieces and fall upon the Earth and basically eradicate humanity. And she says that she's only going to give 12 hours before this happens. 12 hours or 10?
10.
Oh, yeah, 10 hours before this happens. So it's like, yeah, you're pretty much screwed.
Yeah.
I remember when I saw 10, I was like, so she saw Gemini and she was like, bet. Like, we're going to go faster and harder.
Yeah, well, yeah, it took you 12 hours to kill Athena? Fuck it, I'm going to do it in 10. Watch this shit. But,
women always doing men's job better than they.
Hi-oh. So Kamen Rider Furry, any initial thoughts on the actual story itself that you want to bring up?
I really appreciated the little touch. It was like one extra line or 1 or 2 extra lines. It was either Kiki or Shina mentioned how strange it was that Sorrento was helping, and he said that this doesn't necessarily make them comrades just because they happen to be fighting the same person at the same time or something like that. And I love that kind of dynamic to where, I mean, it's kind of the dynamic that Iki takes on in some of the earlier story. Well, actually, pretty much the entire time, but where he just kind of comes and goes as he pleases, and he's sort of part of the group, but not really. But I just kind of love that dynamic where people that were previously enemies work together, but they are not immediately best friends, because I've seen that happen way too many times. Where, looking at you, Steven Universe, where enemies magically become your best friends in the next episode. So I like that they included that, at least that little bitty one line there. But I'm always happy to have anything Poseidon related.
Yeah, it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's what pretty much what they're going with at this point. Where it's just like, look, we all have we're all after the same goal. So unfortunately, we have to work with each other. So yeah,
he was basically saying that like, when this is over, we're going back to not being friends.
Yeah, once this is all over, you and me, gives them the eye, looking at them like, this was a visual podcast. I'd be doing something you guys wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, but this is not a visual podcast. But yeah, I wrote down here because you brought up that point, and also I think yeah, because like Kiki's asking all the important questions. I feel like they're putting Kiki in the position where they want him to be the audience proxy, asking all the questions. So
Mhm.
I feel like I feel what they're doing here with him is like the reason why they have him there. Like, because I'm pretty sure like what they want is they want to have someone familiar. They have Shina. They want to have someone that's familiar with what's going on in the sanctuary, and they want to have someone that's familiar with like what's going on with Poseidon. So they have like Sorrento, and they want to have someone that's like the audience proxy. And I believe that audience proxy is going to be Kiki because he's asking a lot of these questions and doing a lot of things that we're thinking of. So I'm pretty sure that that's the main reason why they have him like why they have him tag along in this one.
The beautiful thing about Kiki being in this as well is the opportunity for humor to be present in the story without it being forced, because Kiki is that kind of I speak before I think character.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a child, so it makes complete sense. But sometimes it's easy to forget with Kurumada stories and with these characters that, the saints are supposed to be between 13 and 15 years old. So it's sometimes an argument of like they don't really act their age, despite the fact that there are arguments for that being the case. But seeing Kiki being so willing to say the things that are on his mind without thinking of the consequences is amusing. I love the panel where he starts saying like, "Hey, what the hell's your problem?" And she's like, "Moron, shut up."
Yeah, like, don't you see this guy's this cause? Don't you see this is you're actually talking to a god? You shouldn't be saying this shit. On the speaking up, eh?
It's like, you're gonna get us killed, bitch.
I'll be really interested to see if they like are they gonna keep those two as the main character, Kiki and China, or is it gonna lean more heavily into Poseidon and his subordinates?
I
don't know.
think that if I had to bet, I think that they will be relevant to the story. I don't think that they would have been put here to they would have been put in this chapter without them. Maybe they're not going to be the main focus, but I do believe that they're going to be heavily involved in the story. One, because you cannot completely set aside the other saints that are still left alive and in a way protecting the earth. It's like it would be the classic syndrome of like the Avengers. Is like, while this tragedy is going on, where the hell are the Avengers, right? Where the hell are the others? It's something like
Yeah.
that. So I think that gives it a very good opportunity to bring in these characters, particularly because even though China has probably been the most active side character in the main story. Like, she's the one that she appears in after the Sanctuary arc. She appears in Poseidon. She appears, even though she's not that involved. She does appear like in when the beginning of Hades, as well as at the end, the protecting, like on the realm of Earth, trying to protect Seiya's sister. So it makes sense for her to be the proactive saint here, and I really like that because it also gives her an opportunity to shine. Because again, with Karmada's stories, if it's not a main character or if it's not directly involved with the plot, he's not going to give them the time of the day. So it's a very good opportunity to give these side characters a bit of time in the spotlight, particularly very beloved characters such as Shine and Kiki. So I really like the fact that they're here. I don't think that they will be like every chapter is going to focus on them, or that they necessarily are going to appear on every chapter. But I do think that they're going to be heavily involved in the story, possibly.
All right. All right. I guess well, I guess we can wrap things up because like we only got like one chapter and like we can only go so far with the chapter. We can only dissect so much without us knowing. So any final thoughts, Kamen Rider Furry?
Uh, I mean, I've said pretty much everything I want to say about it. It's
Okay.
really nice to see the characters back. It's nice to see a different take on the artwork while it's still feeling familiar. Like, that was a really cool thing to do. And I mean, like you said, we only have one chapter, so it's hard to decide. When it comes to manga, I like to get pretty because normally in the United States, so we up until recently, I guess, we would have to get like combined volumes of manga. So I'm used to reading like 5 or 6 chapters at once to get a good feel of it because it's hard to get a good feel of what a particular manga is going to be like with one chapter. So it's hard to say it, but it looks very, very promising.
Becca, you any thoughts on your end? Final thoughts?
Yeah, actually, three of them really quickly. The first one is like, I am really loving how this is going to turn out. I've always, non-ironically, loved the Poseidon saga the most out of the classic story, uh, even more than Hades. There's something about it that I just have a very great fondness of, and seeing those characters being expanded upon and finally being given the time of the day to tell their own story, something that I'm really looking forward to. And so far, everything looks very promising with this very first chapter. That's one. The second, I loved, and I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on the bickering between Hades and Poseidon. Because
Oh
you
yeah.
can you can feel that brotherly brotherly affection that's like on the borderline of hatred. It's like, you're my brother and I do care for you, but at the same time, fuck you. Because the way
Yeah.
that the way that they address each other, even though it's very godly and very formal because of their positions, you can see that there's like, oh, you're here, you fiend, and you look so helpless. It's like, it's very amusing to see.
Yeah, it's like but it's also like one of the things where it's like, look at you now. We're both dead, you motherfucker. But
Yeah.
yeah, I found it interesting because and because going back, let's have going back to being a little bit more serious. Like their bickering also gives us a little bit more of an in-depth glimpse as to like how like how the mindset of of Poseidon was, because we as even though like it's well beloved, like I think all of us can agree that like Poseidon was like one of the better arcs. And it was like a worthy successor, like depending on like if you're reading the manga or if you're watching the anime, it was like a worthy successor either to the Asgard arc or it's a worthy successor to the 12 Houses arc. Regardless, like you get like as much as we found out that we like that, we also didn't get that much time to like get more into like what's going on exactly with like Poseidon himself. So it gives us a little bit more like the bickering does give us like a glimpse as to like what his mindset is, what he's actually thinking, what he like why he did the things he had, like why he did the things he did in his arc, and it gives you a good glimpse as to like, hey, like it gives us also a little bit more sympathy when we get to the point where it's like, okay, so instead of all of us like magically getting along, and then all of us like getting and all of us like magically like getting like magically like everything gets resolved and everybody's a good guy. Here it's like, okay, we get at least now we have a there's like a common cause as to like why why we have to do this and why Poseidon decides to take on this mission.
Yeah, actually, because it gives perfect sense as to why is this character going to protect the Earth. One of the things that it's always very tricky to with these kinds of stories is like you have to be convincing and coherent as to why the character's motivations, especially with what has been presented. Because in the end, these two characters, Hades and Poseidon, they try to destroy humanity, but it is very well established in the story that their intent was not to. Well, Hades was a little bit more ambiguous because it was kind of like he was going to destroy the planet, all the life on the planet, but he didn't want to destroy the planet itself. He just wanted to rid it of humanity. And Poseidon did the same because he thought that humanity had gone corrupt to the point of no return. But their intent has always been to rule over the earth, not to destroy it. So it makes perfect sense for that to be the motivation. It's like Nemesis wants to destroy the planet. Like she wants to destroy everything on it. So it makes sense for those gods to interfere to avoid that because it falls in their interest to stop that. And I thought that it was a very good way to handle it.
Kamen Rider Furry, your thoughts?
I agree a lot. I mean, I agree with most of what you're saying. Like, I also was again. I hate it that I have to admit how little I know about the Hades arc outside of just reading information about it. Um, I'll explain more when we get to the movie because it also has to do with the Asgard arc. But we'll get there. But I agree that I'm very glad that they took the time to give them the correct motivations and that it worked with what had been previously established. And it is really interesting to see them talk to each other because I personally had never seen them communicate with each other before, so that was pretty. But yeah, very. It was just a part that I guess didn't put as much thought into just because of my lack of experience with Hades.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And your last point on mechas?
I was just gonna say that it is. It's a bit sad that with only one chapter, the spin-off has already gathered more attention than Darkwing.
Oh wow!
That's it.
Ow! Ow! And the worst part is, it's like that Darkwing is just like, oh my! It's like I'm surprised that one didn't take off because it's like it's an isekai and all that stuff. But it's like, well, I guess some things shouldn't be an isekai then.
Yeah, we should probably dedicate one day. One day I'll translate those chapters so that we can discuss them properly because it deserves its own conversation. That particular spin-off, or maybe it deserves the lack of the lack of conversation about that spin-off deserves its own episode. I think.
something we can consider like in our off time when we take our breaks. So something that we can like because like what I was discussing with you guys off show like off the off air is that these ideas of like doing these things like based on the spin-off stuff would be like an interesting like deviation as we can talk about like for like 10-15 minutes in our when we take our breaks so we can like put those in like in our extra episodes when we take our break in December. So we'll put a pin on that. We'll put a pin on that on that idea for later. My final thoughts is that I'm really liking what's there so far. I only have one question though, and maybe you can answer this one, Becas. How frequently are we going to be getting these chapters?
I don't know. Like it supposedly should be monthly because I think this falls with the other spin-offs. Let me check real quick. I think that this spin-off is being published in the Champion Red, and the
Yes.
publishing schedule for that is monthly. So theoretically, it should be once a month.
All right.
The first chapter was published in September, so maybe around mid-October we should be getting the other one. Let me just try to clarify that information. But in the meantime, yeah, it theoretically should be monthly.
Okay, sounds
The
good.
final panel just says, "Wait for the next chapter. The publishing date will be announced in this magazine." So somewhere in that issue of Champion Red that wasn't on this panel was that
What's like a list of like
The
what's
date.
gonna be what's gonna be published next.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to read and talk at the same time. It says, "Wait for
That's
the next
fine.
chapter of this spectacular story. The publishing date will be announced in this magazine." So maybe on another part, maybe like in the table of contents, or maybe there's like a place with like information that we just didn't get scans of that has the publishing schedule on it. But that's what the last panel says.
All right. So I like that's the thing. It's like right now it's all ambiguous because like it could be all like it could be one of those like is for all we know it could be like at the author's discretion like whenever they get their stuff ready. So it's like who knows. But like I said, I'm excited to see where this goes. They haven't. The thing is, like I said, like it's hard to really judge anything with this one chapter. But it's a solid start to what's going on. But it's like I just don't want to. I have this big fear that something's gonna happen that's gonna fumble the ball. But we just have to wait. We just have to wait and like hope that they don't do that. But so far it seems promising with everything that we've read so far. Alrighty then, that should be it. So why don't we get on to talking about the second movie, the hot-blooded battle of the gods, or the heated battle of the gods, or if you watched it in Spanish, la gran batalla de los dioses. All right, alrighty then. So, first things first, I want to ask a question. I want to ask a question to both of you guys, and maybe you guys can clarify this. How popular was Yoga?
He is a very popular character in the original Japanese polls, like the ones that were made when the story was being published in the Shonen Jump.
Oh,
He was the second most popular character.
wow. Okay. All right. No wonder. Because like I was just saying in my notes here, it's like it's amazing. It's kind of crazy to see that Hyoga is getting so much attention in two movies already. In the first movie, he's the one that's in contact with Ares, and now like the entire freaking movie is predicated on him being in Asgard. So it's insane. I was just wondering like how popular was he to get to this point with in the to get like a spotlight in two movies like very early on. So here's some information right here. The movie was released in 1988. It was paired with with two other animes, Lady, Byakunin, and Kamen Rider Black. So there you go, Kamen Rider Furry. It's paired up, and it was released on the March 12th of that year. And if we were to take this in consideration, we would have been in the middle part of the fight between Aphrodite and Chun.
Yeah.
So that should give us a little background where we are in the actual series itself. So not quite where we were the last time, because in the last time when we did the first movie, we kind of actually like we actually kind of like aligned itself pretty well to where we are. This one's a little bit more farther up ahead, but what's interesting is like it doesn't really spoil much at all that we're gonna see much later anyway. So let's see. So any thoughts on on this miscellaneous information so far, Kamen Rider Furry?
I didn't know that this aired when you said this aired towards the very end of the Sanctuary arc, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
For some reason I just assumed this aired while Asgard was airing because
I thought
it's
so
related
too.
to Asgard.
I thought so too.
That's
But
a little bizarre.
but then again, too, I think if it aired during Asgard, it would have confused people even more.
Well, I my takeaway from this, and I don't know how funny everybody else is going to find this being, but I found it hilarious because I guess you could consider, since this is the what did they call them? The God Warriors? Is that what they
Yeah.
call
Yeah.
them? So the God Warriors in this, I guess, were kind of like the B tier gods from Norse mythology,
They kind of are.
because the other ones in the show got fleshed out a bunch more.
Mm-hmm.
Not, well, I guess not a bunch more, but at least there was more episodes. Like they didn't die like 3 seconds after they got introduced, like in this, because of the runtime, because it's like a 40-minute movie. So the run there,
More like
you get what I'm
like
saying. It's
30.
basically just like
Yeah,
watching
yeah,
two episodes.
yeah. It was
It,
gonna be very difficult to flesh them out.
I was
So
gonna say like
I consider this to be the B tier, and it's amusing to me because this came out in the 80s, before, like, long before Marvel movies and stuff. But Marvel movies have kind of made, because of how popular Tom Hiddleston's character for Loki is, has kind of made Loki like the, other than Thor, basically the god that you think of when somebody says Norse mythology. Everybody's like, oh yeah, Thor and Loki. So I think
yeah,
it's funny that this is from a time before Loki was considered like an A-list Norse god.
fair
He's
enough.
relegated to this movie where he does almost nothing. And
Oh,
I think it's so funny because in stuff now, like if we look at like Record of Ragnarok, which also has the North gods in it, they made a point to include a Loki character because he's just so popular in pop culture now, and that's what
mm-hmm.
people think of, like Thor and Loki, when you think of Norse mythology. But this was before. I really, I guess we have to credit the Marvel movies for like changing the cultural, I don't want to say zeitgeist. I hate that word, but like the cultural,
The
like,
perception.
yeah, perception of Norse gods. Because I remember when I was a kid, if you said Norse gods, I would instantly think of Odin, partially because of Saint Seiya, partially because of the Final Fantasy series, because he was a pretty prominent character in several of the games there. And so I think it's funny because I would, every time one of the characters would come up with this, I was like, ooh, that's a B list. That's a B list North god. Like, ooh, like Freyr. I don't even know if I knew that one existed, but okay, like whatever. I knew Freya from
Yeah.
Final Fantasy again, but
Well, then again, but we'll get to Freya when we eventually get to Hades, and well, not to Hades, when we get to the actual Asgard arc.
yeah, it was just a little, it was a little bit strange that, especially now that you put it into context when this came out, that they were already playing with the idea of having other gods and stuff, because the whole point of the Asgard arc, if I understand correctly, was that they caught up too quickly with the manga, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
But they
like all
must have had
fillers.
the idea for Asgard in there for a while then. It's just wow.
Yeah, I actually have
Well,
some information to complement
go for it.
what you just mentioned for of the dates, because I
Go
thought
on.
that it was a very interesting point. Because a lot of people like, okay, the Asgard movie, like the movie that we're talking about right now, Saint Seiya Kami Kami no Atsuki Tatakai. It came out, as you said, on March 12th, 1988. However,
Mm.
episode 74 of the original anime, which introduced Asgard, debuted on the 23rd of April 1988. So there's only like a month difference between
Huh.
the release of this movie and the Asgard arc. And apparently, a very common thought is that the movie came out like they just retook the assets and that part of the second movie to adapt it and utilize it for the filler part of the anime for the Asgard arc. However, with these dates being only 1 month away, it's more than obvious that they had to have been working on this even prior to that, because like they were catching up. And apparently, well, the writer for the movie was Takao Koyama. He's the one that wrote the script, and he's also credited with the original like outline for the Asgard arc. So all
Huh.
those elements, so more than likely, like they were kind of working not simultaneously, but they were working in that same time frame for both of these projects. because let's remember that producing these movies as well as the ideas for the TV show, because it continued to keep going, like it didn't take a break back then. They had to been working on that prior to those episodes actually coming out and to this movie coming out. So I think that time frame gives us quite a bit of a picture of how the entire Asgard project for Saint Seiya was handled.
Yeah, and that and like you said, like no, you brought up another interesting point that the same guy who did the writing for Asgard, who came up with all that stuff for Asgard, did this movie. So I wrote down here because like we get to see some of the characters, and we get to. And I said here, oh god, we'll get to that later. So the two God warriors that we get to see, the two other ones that come before it. I feel like those were like prototype designs for like all the other. I feel like they were like I know I'm skipping ahead, but I feel like those designs, like I feel like they mashed all those designs together and they came up with these two characters from all those designs that's from those designs from the Asgard arc.
Yeah, there must have been like elements that got reused. Actually, now that you mentioned that, there are a couple things that I want to mention regarding the designs. The first one
Yeah.
that has to do with reusing assets. Actually, the design for the character of oh god, his name just escaped me, of Hagen,
What?
of Hagen. It was
Uh-huh.
actually made for this movie. Like that was one of the designs that Araki Pro had made, and that the original intention was that character was to be the character of Midgard in this movie, prior
Uh-huh.
to Hyoga taking on that role. But
Oh.
in the end result, we never saw that character. That must have been like a pre. Sorry, I forgot the term, but you know those ideas that get put on the table but then get scrapped out during the middle of production.
Yes,
So
pre-production.
yeah, so during pre-production, that idea like was pitched, and it apparently that was what's speculated, because it has never like been 100% confirmed. But that was, he was going to appear, and then he was going to get replaced. Well, that character was going to appear in the movie one way or another, but it never came to be. So they reutilized that asset because apparently Michi Himeno was extremely fond of that design, and that's why they reuse it for Hagen later.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's one thing. And the other, prior to so that we can continue discussing the designs, even though Kurumada wasn't as involved in giving ideas for the plot of the movies after the first movie, from this movie onwards, he just gave some designs, but we have never really known what he gave for movies 3 and 4. But for this movie, it is confirmed because the designs for the faces that Kurumada made for the characters of Dorval, Freya, and Loki are confirmed to have made by him.
That makes
Not
sense
the
because like
not the armors, just the character design.
yeah, and it is kind of weird when you see Dalber and Freya and Loki. Like they have this Kuromata like look to them. Like it looks like something that belongs to belongs to this world of Saint Seiya. And then you can see other guys are like, yeah. It's like you can totally tell that that these guys were an afterthought. And when we get to something later, it's like, well, one of these characters is actually one of the other characters from the series. So but yeah, I mean, that was really another question. What was who was the character designer of this movie? Was it Shingo Araki that did this?
Yes, well, Araki Production, I think that Shingo Araki and Michi Himeno, as well as some other
Okay.
assistants, were involved in the designs for the movie. Araki Pro was heavily like usually when it came to the big projects, Himeno and Araki were the ones that they usually like focus their time on doing these things.
Kamen Rider Furry, anything like on design or anything in general with what's going on with the series itself? What's on your mind?
I had a thought, and it's one that I've talked about very lightly before, but we were talking about like the continuity and how these are being worked on kind of at the same time, and how they are very reminiscent of each other, but at the same time different. And there were some of the assets were used and things like that. And I just from watching, because I have my own podcast, of course, where we watch older anime and stuff like that. And I think that just it was back in the day, the reason, because hold on, let me focus. Back in the day, a lot of the anime movies were non-canonical, sometimes a little off the wall, sometimes it included these characters that would never fit into the show, or characters that were like redone versions of characters in the show. And I'm not just talking about just Saint Seiya, but a lot of anime from the 80s and 90s was like that. And I think it was because there wasn't a super reliable way to rewatch stuff, because like now when a Marvel movie comes out, the big fans that will go back and rewatch several of the old movies to get caught up on it. But that wasn't really something that you could do very easily back in the late 80s or even the early 90s. Like VHSs, even when they did start to come out, were very expensive, and same with laser discs and other things
Yeah.
of that nature. So I think that the movies were so seemingly random and misplaced and non-canonical because they wanted people to have a good time without having to worry about being completely caught up with they are in the story. Because like you said, when this movie debuted, they were still in the Sanctuary arc, albeit the very
Well,
end of the Sanctuary arc. But this made it to where people weren't having to keep up specifically. They could go in with a broad idea of the characters in the show and still enjoy it and still be entertained, instead of having it be like you have to stop at episode 56, watch the movie, and then keep watching, because that's how a lot of media is now.
Yeah.
Looking at you, Kamen Rider, do that a ton, and it annoys me. But that was just kind of my feel from that conversation before. But as far as the character designs, we all know who my favorite one is. Like at this point, it's not even funny to say it anymore.
oh my god, I wrote down here when I first saw that character, Kamen Rider fodder, Kamen Rider Furry
Yeah.
fodder.
Yep. I mean, I love him. I wish that he'd been on the screen a little bit more. But that being said, I like all of these designs, but I do have to say that this episode in general is making me feel a little bit imposter syndrome, because we started off talking about, there we go. We started off talking about the Hades arc and stuff that happened in the Hades arc, and I'm not super familiar with that. And while I have watched the Asgard arc, and I've watched this movie before as well, it's been a long time, because I when I was rewatching the new dub on Netflix, I finished the first arc, the Sanctuary arc, and then I didn't really care a whole lot about the Asgard arc, and I was excited to hear the voices in English for the Poseidon arc, so I skipped to the Poseidon arc, and I didn't watch the Asgard arc. I intended to go back and watch it, but then I started this podcast, and I was like, it's gonna melt my brain if I'm watching two different continuities at the same time. So it's like, eventually we'll get there, and then Netflix took it off, and I don't know, like
Oh Lord.
I feel like I'm spiraling at this point. So I apologize to everybody listening. But yeah, I don't remember of everything in the Saint Seiya canon that I've watched and experienced. The Asgard arc is probably the one that I remember the least. So I super apologize if I say anything that sounds completely off the wall during this recording.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine. That and you know, it's a, but here's the thing. Like if you take it as face value, as like what you are right now, you're the audience proxy right now. You are you have the insight of someone that's not seen that part of the series yet, or rather, they have some knowledge of what's going on in that part of the series, but they haven't been fully immersed in it. So you get a good. So this is gonna be a good someone looking from the outside looking in. So I would like, don't worry if you feel too bad, because like I see where you see it as being a detriment. I see it as a positive, because I see we can make this work. We can totally make this work. Like I said, you're gonna be our audience proxy. You're gonna be the one that's gonna be telling us, you're gonna be asking the questions that I'm very sure the audience that's never that has, if they're playing catch up with us watching the series as we're doing it right now. You're gonna be the one asking the questions that I think pretty much everyone else could be asking. By the way, I'm pretty sure. By the way, everyone, please start submitting more questions, because I'm getting very lonely in my inbox. I'm getting a lot of spam messages. Anyways,
My only question with this movie is, what the hell was going on with Hyoga?
Okay. So why don't we get started and talking about the actual movie itself? Let's start off with that question then. Go on.
Well, so at the beginning of the movie, so Hyoga is in Asgard because reasons. I don't remember if they ever said the reason why, but he saves a man. Oh, go ahead.
He was actually in Siberia.
Oh, I thought he was in Asgard. He was in Siberia?
No, he was in Siberia. That's where the movie starts.
Oh, so he saves a man in Siberia. I guess that he's there, wishing that his mom was still there or something. I don't know. I don't know. But he saves a man, and then he gets attacked and basically kidnapped. And a big plot point of this movie is the other Bronze Saints minus Ikki trying to find him, and Sayori trying to find him. And
Mm-hmm.
But there's just some weird happenings with him, and I don't know if I feel like I was paying well enough attention, and I remember being confused the first time I watched this movie as well. But he gets kidnapped, and he gets kidnapped. Then Sayori and her group go to Asgard to ask, the gods there if they know anything about it, where he would be, and of course they say no, that they don't know, etc., etc. And we see a character who, spoiler alert, turns out to be Hyoga
Mm-hmm.
in armor. Like he's been, corrupted or whatever to fight for them. But then, like, one or two scenes later, we see him like tied up in a dungeon, like
That's not
looking
him.
like he's got. Who was that?
That
That
was
was
that. That was
Frey.
that was Frey. You
Okay,
think
I thought that was Hyoga. Okay, now I'm much less
no,
confused.
no, because the thing was like I thought that too. I put down all my I put that on my notes here. It's like how the hell is you teleporting all over the place? But then when I watched it again, I was like, oh, that's Frey. I thought it was
Okay,
Hyoga.
okay, I
Because like
100% thought that was Hyoga.
because like when you watch it again, like it was Frey's voice. I'm like, okay, it's supposed to be Frey, not Hyoga. Okay, this makes perfect sense now.
I'm much
Because I
less
was I
confused
with
now.
I'm told I was with and the thing was I wrote down exactly that in my notes. You're not
I
alone.
I literally have Hyoga is chained to the wall, question mark, because it was the scene after, like, he makes that awkward eye contact with, I think it was like Shiryu or somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Shiryu. He makes like really awkward eye contact with. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Hyoga. And then they showed him chained to the wall. Where they showed Freyr chained to the wall. And I thought that was Hyoga. I was like, okay, maybe that's not. Like maybe it's like somebody pretending to be him. Like maybe this cloth, like on my first time watching it, I mean, like I was like, maybe this cloth like imitates people or something, and
Yeah.
or like takes their personality. But then he started using diamond dust and stuff that like only people that have trained under in the anime, it would be the Crystal Saint or
Camus.
why am I
Camus.
blanking? Camus. They would have to train under one of those two to know that. So it's like, no, that this has got to be Hilga. Like it was a very confusing experience the first time, but now that I can't believe it, and all of the times that I've watched this movie, I've never realized that was Freyr the whole time.
It is a
Any
bit
thought
of a.
I was gonna
It
say
is a
I
bit.
was actually gonna turn it to you.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing to see when the first time you've watched it, but yeah, after the second watch, you can start piecing some pieces together because remember that like Hyoga, like he appears in the very beginning and he's the one that quote unquote saves because in the end he dies that character from that random from Asgard, and that's the line that makes them want to go there to see what the hell is going on. Then apparently it's implied that Hyoga goes by himself, like he apparently he's closer, so he decides to go before informing the others. The others know because he informed Athena of what's going on with Asgard, and then he goes there. But then, like before the title ends, the introduction, we see him that he's like defeated with his cloth broken. So apparently he was defeated when he went to Asgard, and then the villain, which his name is Dorval,
Dobler.
he used like a technique that's implied to be something similar to the demon fist from Saga, so to control his mind. So that's why Hyoga is acting on behalf of Asgard throughout the almost the entire movie.
Mm. But yeah, so yeah, as we began, it's like as we mentioned, like the movie begins. We cut to Siberia. We get to see this old man getting beat up, and then he gets saved by Hilda. Hilda asks him like, "Hey, what's going on?" And then he tells him something is up, and we need help. And he goes out to Asgard. He goes out to Asgard, and he gets his ass kicked. And then they're like, "Okay, so we haven't heard anything from Hilda. We better we better have a we better like go and check out what's going on here in Asgard." So thus the movie starts. The movie starts proper. We get to see Pegasus Fantasy. That's what I'm gonna say. Like this is more like a 38-minute movie because you have Pegasus Fantasy and you got the ending part here as well. So it's so. But yeah, if you like, and it makes sense that you would get confused, Kamen Rider Furry, because like when your allowance of time is like 38 minutes, sometimes you get confused, and like that's why I had to watch it again, and I have to watch it again in Spanish.
There was another really confusing part that happens towards the beginning. Well, it starts in the beginning and then it culminates towards the end. But one of the tropes that happens not just in Saint Seiya, but I mean, it happens a lot in Saint Seiya, and I keep pointing it out when I see it happen, is they like to force rivalries between characters so that they can have these big epic fights between them. And they did it in the last movie, they're doing it in this movie, they did it in the Sanctuary arc, they did it in the Poseidon arc, just like kind of finding one person that eventually like Shun is gonna, face off against, one person that Shidi is gonna have a drag out fight with. And they do that at the beginning of this movie because they go to Asgard and they ask, have you seen Hyoga? And they say no, but we can lead you to the mountain, so that you can look for yourself, And so Freyr and Freya take them out of the main castle area, whatever you want to call it, like where all the gods are.
Mm-hmm.
And on their way out, they have these like really awkward encounters with their rivals. But Seiya doesn't talk to Loki that much, who ends up being his rival, and instead talks to the big guy and like has some like sassy things to say to the really big guy, who ends up being Ikki's fight. And it was weird because I was kind of expecting that to be like Seiya to fight both of them, because I mean, of course, Ikki's going to show up somewhere in there, but up until now, up until that point, we hadn't even seen them mentioned whatsoever. So I was kind of expecting Seiya to fight both of them, because Seiya often does get kind of doubled and tripled up in the fights that he does, because he's the main character.
Fair enough.
He's the shonen protagonist. So it was very jarring when Ikki came out of nowhere and just like basically harakiri that guy in the stomach. Well, made him harakiri himself in the stomach. But it was just weird because it was, and I guess that's what they call a subversion of expectations or whatever. But it still was weird because it was so different from how the show is normally written.
Yeah.
I get what you mean. Like the interactions between the foes here was kind of weird. I was like, I think that's probably the, now that you mention it like that, this is probably the, in a way, the least well, I was gonna say the least traditional movie from the franchise, but I actually have quite a few points to make regarding Toei showing its ugly hand in the plot in many aspects, but I'll leave that for later.
All right. So, and I wrote down here in my notes because like they start introducing these characters a little bit. Little I wrote down here: never trust a man named Loki.
Not ever.
No, because like because and I was right. And I thought at first he was gonna be the main bad guy, but it's like no, it's Dauber. I wrote down here.
Well, he does have the face of a perv, so it was inevitable for him to be the.
And can I also say, while we're talking about Loki, that I was, again, this is from before everybody knew about. Well, I guess I shouldn't say everybody. This is from before like Loki was like a popular like fictional character in media. But still, Loki has always been like the trickster god.
Yeah.
So I was really hoping because Kurumada's been so good about like implying the gods' natures in the characters that they represent.
Yeah.
And this one I just felt like was a complete missed opportunity. And I know that he wasn't, we already kind of talked about how he wasn't directly involved with a whole lot of this movie, but it felt like a missed opportunity, because like if they would have had him be more like, he just thought it would be funny to start a war, and that's why he was like manipulating everybody, if he was the true mastermind behind everything, kind of like you had just said you thought that he was going to be the main bad guy. I was kind of hoping that was the route they would take with it, but he just ended up being just another generic, cannon fodder character.
I do have a bit of an answer to that. The reason for it is that in this case, those characters, despite the fact that they're named after after Norse
Asgardian.
mythological, after Asgardian and Norse mythological beings, they're only borrowing the names. For example, the main bad guy is called Dolbar, which is literally just turning around in the pronunciation of Japanese, like Baldur. Like in Japanese would be pronounced Bardur, and in Japanese the name of the villain is Dorvar. Like they just like played with the names that way. They take the names from those beings, but they're not supposed to be those beings. They're only borrowing those elements for this
not
movie.
made clear at all.
yeah, it isn't, because if you only watch it at face value, you would assume that they're like either the literal gods or like warriors using like armors that represent those gods, and they should be more mythologically akin to those characters, but they're not.
Well, when we get to something later with Loki, it's like I do appreciate one little thing that they brought in. They brought in from his from his mythology that they actually put into his character. But that's something that we're going to be discussing like way later. And I wrote down here. So the note I was looking here is Dober being creepy because he's like, so you want to stay?
Yeah.
So you want to stay for dinner? Yeah, don't worry. Come on. You know, there's more room here in the great hall for you and the saints. I'm like, dude, like, you know, this is like all the bad signs, like all the signs are just all the red flags are coming up like coming up really quickly. But to go back to your point, Kamen Rider Furry, one of the things I wrote down here too is that you know Shiryu is a smarter guy in the room asking Loki what's going on, and soon afterwards Seiya is the one that starts to like you know starts to egg him on. So I'm pretty sure from there that's where we start saying that like you know we're gonna eventually get a Seiya versus Loki fight.
Yeah, I guess I just noticed him interacting with the big guy more, like because it seemed to set up the other rivalries or I call them rivalries, the other like big fights that we were gonna see in the future, like Shiryu versus Hyoga and Shun versus whoever that was. It just didn't even bother to remember their name because it lasted like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But it was in that scene where they were setting it up, and Loki wasn't present in that scene, so like Seiya just started like shit talking the big guy. I guess because there wasn't anybody left. But that would have. I wish they would have just had Loki in that scene to kind of foreshadow that he was going to fight them. But
oh, the big guy's name is Rung.
Rung.
Yep.
Rung.
Huh.
I wrote that down because I was like, oh yeah, he sounds like the Transformers character Rung.
Oh, Uller is the one that fought Shun.
Yes, Uller. Yeah, Uller, Rung,
and then Hyoga
Galber,
was pretending
Loki.
to be Midgard, right?
Yes.
Well,
so we remembered their names. Yay!
This
Something we don't
is
do with the movies as much.
not just that. It's like thank God. Thank God now I'm starting taking notes because like I was saying, I was saying off air. It's like I started taking notes, but not like the traditional way that you would think that you would take notes nowadays. I actually started doing these physically as I was recording, as I watched the movie, and I was like, and so it's like that's why I have these names recorded. So yeah, we have that, and then get to another weird scene like right after when we get to introduce to Freya and Freya. It's like it's like he walks up to Sayori and he gives him, and I wrote down here, this guy is giving Athena the bedroom eyes.
Yeah, he looked like a perv.
It's like,
Well,
hey, go on.
I was just saying, I'm glad that he got screen time because I feel like Freya was such a wasted character, though. Like,
Yeah.
they made her seem like she was going to be really important, and I don't know if it was the like framing of how she was introduced, but she seemed like she was going to be really important, and then she does nothing. Like after they all decide to go and fight back to save Hyoga or whatever, she just kind of stops doing anything.
Yeah, she did. She actually, I did have that same observation. Like, I didn't remember very much. It had been a while since I watched this particular movie, so watching it again, I was like, I could have sworn that she was relevant to the plot, but nope.
Nope. But
Thank you.
Freya comes back at the end and does some slightly important things, but Freya is
Yeah.
just like, nope.
Thank you. You know, that's the same thing I had thought about it too, because like I hadn't watched the movie. Okay, so confession, I have not watched the movie since 1996. Is that when it came out on home video in Mexico?
I think so. Actually, I do have a comment to make about that, but you go on first.
So I haven't watched it since then. I remember not liking it, but like I said, I'll play my cards later, and I could have swore that Freya played a bigger role when I watched it the first time when I was a teenager, but apparently not. So yeah, so they step out after Freya offers them like a place to stay so they can look for Hyoga. And like I said, I said here, like I wrote down here, big guy has to be Kamen Rider Furry fodder, which is Ulgar, not Ulgar. It's Rung. So I got the right one on this one. Yay. And I also says here, remember to reference big and stupid.
Oh God, no! Oh God, I love that song so much.
So I said,
oh,
go on.
No, I was just gonna say I love her so much.
I know, and it's like it's been stuck in my head whenever I see a character like that. So like, yeah, Rung is our big and stupid character. So there you go. Take a drink. So take a swig. Anybody that's paying attention at home.
That's that is a callback because that was one of our earliest episodes that we did together.
Yes, it is. And so I wrote down here, the guy on the right looks like every God Warrior in the actual series, which is Ugler. When we see Ugler, his design is like every God Warrior that we get to see when we get to the series proper. So we already discussed that part already. Your You're not fooling anyone. You're not fooling anyone. Anyone, because as they're walking out, we get to see the guy in this day glow orange armor, and it says, "You're not fooling anyone, Yoga." And then Shirio's having this moment where he's like, this guy looks familiar." And I wrote down at first, Shiri, are you super not to recognize Yoga underneath that day glow orange armor? And then wait, and then I wrote down later, wait, never mind, because he literally seconds later, like, is that Hyoga? Like, okay, I'll give him this much. They're at least smart. They're at least smart enough to recognize their cosmos. Thank you. And then it's like Seiya smug ass walk as he's walking by as walking out Rung. That is fucking hilarious.
Oh yeah, he has this fucking smug face on him, and he's acting like that. Actually, is one of the comments that I had about Seiya in this movie, but in general, despite the fact that it is in character for Seiya to be like a bit of a brat and a bit of a cheeky bastard sometimes, it doesn't get that side of his character doesn't really get shown that much in the original story. Like it's very rare those times when Seiya allows where the story allows Seiya to show that part of his personality. So I like that. I like the fact that they use that here. It's like it's easy to forget that Seiya can be a bit of a cheeky dum dum sometimes.
Yeah, and I thought of you because like I think we were discussing this once a couple episodes back, because it's like it's rare to see Seiya show personality other than shonen protagonist. I must do the thing. So it's like it's good. It's very good and very interesting to see these little moments where you get to see his little bit of personality. Where he has smarts. He's a smart enough dude to like know what's going on, but he's like he's also kind of a smart ass as well. So it's good that we get to see a little bit of that. Kamen Rider Furry, any thoughts so far?
I appreciated that out of everybody that could have potentially recognized Hyoga, that it was Shun. Or sorry, not Shun, Shiryu. I was reading again. I just stopped reading and talking at the same time.
Sorry,
Shiryu.
sorry.
I appreciate that it was Shiryu, because I feel like his other senses are heightened because of the blindness, so it makes the most sense that he would be the most aware of his surroundings at all times, because he had to focus so much on hearing and touch and all the other senses other than sight, basically. So I'm glad that he was the one that recognized him right off the bat. I 100% forgot that was Hyoga. I 100% forgot that was Hyoga in there. So I was very funnily surprised whenever that reveal happened.
Interesting.
I didn't remember. Apparently, I didn't remember anything about this movie at all, other than I remembered Loki and I remembered the big bad guy, but that was about it, I guess. Because the rest of it, I was just really shocked. I didn't know Freya and Freya were in the movie. Like, I didn't remember a squat because it had been a long time since
Same here
as well.
It's like I said, like I don't. Go first.
Sorry, I was just gonna say a couple things. One, like this movie. Like it's funny because for me it has been kind of a revelation rewatching it for two reasons. This movie used to be, out of all the Saint Seiya movies, my least favorite one for the longest time, and I didn't even remember why. I just remember that I watched it the first time. I didn't like it for some reason, but not only that, like I have a very particular bone to pick with this movie. No, that's not the right phrase, but here's the thing: the scene of Hyoga wearing Midgard's armor and fighting Shiryu, I saw that when I was so young, like in the 90s when I was a little kid. And for the love of my life, I could never find the scene again because remember, children, this is a time before the internet. Shocking. So like it was very difficult to find things back then or to watch it. I must have watched it on TV or something. And I was like, just like, why is Hyoga fighting Shiryu? What the hell is going on? And for the longest time, I even thought that I hallucinated that fucking scene because I just couldn't find like the evidence of that actually happening. Like I rewatched the entire show at one point, and that never happened. So I was like, when the hell did this happen? This was before I think I was aware of what movies were and how they were their own little thing. So that scene of Hyoga fighting Shiryu always stuck with me, and it was like a bone that I always had with this movie. It's like, where did I see it? Where did I saw that? I know I'm not crazy. And then finally being able to see that, oh, it's from this movie. It's like finally putting to rest one pet peeve that I had for the longest time because I thought that I was gonna go insane. It's like I swear that I didn't hallucinate this. And no, yes, it's real. Just that back then oh, in the good old times where it was more difficult to find information about everything if you didn't have it in VHS or something. Those were wild times. It's like that's a very strong memory I have about this movie.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I'll never forget that that feeling of going insane, of watching that and not knowing where the hell it was from, especially because it was from the time where, like, when you're a child and you discover this type of things, you don't know that the movies are not canon. You don't know that the thing that you're watching is like a separate little side story. You think that it is part of the continuity, and I was like, why the hell did this happen? Like, why is Hyoga being evil? But well, that finally was laid to rest. But no, rewatching this movie, it's actually funny because now I think it's one of my favorite movies for many reasons. The music is definitely one of them.
Oh yeah,
We'll get to that
I
later.
wrote that. I was say I wrote down here because like we get to we get to Shiryu, who's like sensing everybody's we get to Shiryu, he's sensing everybody's like cosmos is like oh my god, everybody's cosmos are very violent for some reason. And I wrote down here Seiji Yokoyama is really shredding on his Casio. Because he's making like he's just like I don't know what he's doing to like make like again I'm pretty sure he's on the cast like trying to make it sound like right trying to make it the sound and also like the music to coincide like these guys are like not on the level, and it's like it sounds like it just sounds like a cat like on it sounds like a cat on a Casio piano, but in a good way. It's in a like it's so it's like. But so it's not like one of those things where it's like I hope they don't play this. I hope they don't play this song at a concert like this. But it's pretty interesting when you hear that because like. But yeah, this was they used a lot of those tracks later on for the actual Asgard arc. So we get to see a lot of that the stuff used here like used later. So it's really again props to Seiji Yokoyama for like his amazing soundtrack with it. So after that, they're Frey and everybody else. They go to a cabin and they actually find Hyoga's. They actually find a piece of his cloth. They actually find his helmet, and they tell him this line, and they tell him like, "Don't worry, like when we actually do find them, we'll send them back. We'll send them back to you guys." And I'm like, "So what? You're just gonna like FedEx them to like back to Greece? You better crack some holes in that. You better cut some holes in that box if you're gonna like keep if you're gonna send them out to Greece. I don't want to know how much of shipping it was from Greece to Asgard." So yeah.
Was a fortune.
No, I was just gonna say after that is when one of my favorite parts of the movie happens because I keep wanting to say Sienna because we've been talking about the 3D brain rot. The 3D brain rot. Sayori meets up with Mr. Big Bad Dolbar. And she actually is able to defend herself. I mean, obviously, she eventually succumbs to him because that's the plot momentum that moves the story forward. She succumbs to him, and everybody feels her Cosmo fade, and that's what prompts them to like, oh crap, we better get on the offensive, and that's what starts the one-on-one fights and all that stuff. But he initially tries to like choke her out, and she's able to defend herself, which is not something that happens in this show a ton. As Sayori, at least before like she gets like her like super ultimate goddess form or whatever, for her to be able to defend herself like that. So I was very happy to see them, even if she immediately basically gets like bitch slapped down to the ground right after that. Like it was still nice to see her put up a fight instead of being Daphne Blake damsel in distress the whole time. So that was really cool. But that does move the plot forward, so it was needed. And he like puts her on the like bow of the ship as like one of those like old timey ship decorations where they would have like a mermaid or like a woman.
Oh my god!
In front of the ship.
The same thing. My notes.
It was so bizarre. Like, and then she's just sitting there like with this dad ass look on her face.
It's exactly what. This is exactly what I wrote. Is that thing I supposed to see like those mermaids that they put in front of those old ships?
Yeah, it
like
gave me One Piece vibes for sure.
But there's something that happens before that. So Freyr actually goes up to goes up to Dober, and he's like, so what are you doing? Like, I'm so like it's something's up. Are you really gonna start doing this? And I wrote down here, oh, he said the thing because he says in Japanese words, he says, are you starting a hot-blooded fiery battle against the gods themselves? And in the Spanish version, he literally says, "Are you trying to instigate a grand battle of the gods?" I'm like, he said the thing. He said the thing.
Roll
said the
credits.
The movie.
And then as I wrote down, yeah, how the Monkey King and Anubis they take you meddling in the Greek gods? Because it's
I
like
can't-
it seems to go on.
No, I was just gonna say this is off topic, but I can't think of people saying movie names in the movie without thinking of that Family Guy joke with the Superman 4, the Quest for Power, and that's why I'm Superman 4, the Quest for Power. He said the name of the show. Sorry,
That's fine.
as soon as he
That's
said
fine.
that, that's the first thing that popped in my mind. It's like he said the name.
Why are we having the same fucking notes? It's like it's so insane that we're like you and me have the exact same notes.
Work together too much, I think.
I know. So yeah, like I said, like he says, like I'm gonna instigate a war against Athena and take over the sanctuary. And then, like I said, Fire's like, how are you doing? Like, why are you gonna be doing this? Like, why are you doing this? Like, we all have to respect each other's gods. Like, why are you doing this? And like, again, that's why I said, yeah, how will the Monkey King and Anubis take this? Like, you're invading the Greek gods. Because this is implying that there are other deities in the universe that they have to like play by their own rules, and it's like, how do they feel about all this? So this is a cross out thing. You're dead. That's why you get for turning your because like Delber's like he puts him he does the thing. He does his special ability and he sends him. And then I said there, wow, Asgardians have some fucked up kinks because again we cut to like soon after because we originally thought was Yoga, but it's actually Freyr, and he's like hanging. He's hanging like through. He's like being. They're like it's so weird to describe. He's not quite hanging. He's like they're not quite impaled. It's like they locked him up, but there's like an endless abyss on the bottom.
He's suspended very high off the ground with his arms being like crushed by cinder blocks.
Yes,
like a T-pose.
Yes, and it's like it's just like
he's in the well from the Swan Lake. What was the name of that? The Prince and the Swan. Is that the name of that movie?
Yeah.
God, I ruined that joke.
Yeah, that's fine. Any thoughts so far, Benjas?
Yeah, that's that particular part. I thought I actually wanted to talk upon something that Kamen said regarding Saori. I mentioned before that Toei something about Toei showing its ugly head. Unfortunately, when it comes to Saint Seiya, like it is one of those series that a lot of people criticize it for being way too formulaic. Okay, that's by design. Kurumada tends to do his stories like that, so most of his stories do suffer from that. However, the brilliance of Kurumada's story usually is not about just the formula, but the execution of each new chapter. Like they take that formula, but he makes interesting ways to play with it to give us new and interesting things for each arc. Toei, unfortunately, and I will keep saying this, like I don't want to sound like I hate the anime, because I think that I'm giving that impression on every single episode. It's not that I hate the anime, but after reading the manga and reading Kurumada's story itself and realizing just how much Toei, the things that it changed, how it played with things, and how it makes some characters look like completely different from what the way that they were originally presented and things like that, I have become extremely critical of Toei in that regard. And unfortunately, when it comes to the series as well, and right now the topic is the movie, because the movies, unfortunately, they suffer from it is the same fucking movie, just change the names of the character syndrome. Because unfortunately, if you look at movie 1, movie 2, movie 3, movie 4, and movie 5, they're all the same fucking movie. You just change some of the events, places, and locations, and it's the exact same synopsis. Like you just eliminate the names of some of the characters, and it's the same thing, even down to the fucking climax. Like every single movie gets resolved the same way. But okay, I don't want to get too forward with that. Returning to this particular point, and when it comes to the topic of Saori, I agree with you, Kamen, because this is probably the movie where she acts a little bit more than in any of the others. But Saori, unfortunately, is one of those characters that gets labeled, rightfully so, if you only watch the anime, as just a damsel in distress. Like she is a damsel in distress in the original story as well, but the execution and the reasonings for how she's a damsel or why she needs to be rescued in each arc makes a lot of sense once you actually watch the context for those arcs unfolding. But Toei, when it came for their original ideas, they just put her in that role for the sake of actually giving us something for the Saints to fight and to try to rescue her. And some of the executions are better than others. I think that here it was done much better than some of the other movies. But in the end, it's the same thing. Like Saori looks like a complete fool, and she's supposed to be a goddess, but like how am I supposed to believe that she's really a goddess if she basically does nothing? And this movie unfortunately falls under that same criticism. She really does not do anything,
And
and
that's where
it's unfortunate that she gets taken out in such a way. But at the same time, at least it was the most unique and the most visually striking out of all the movies
Oh
that
yeah,
I remember.
I just wrote down. I just have one word here when I saw when Dauber was doing his special ability to Athena. I just put there trippy.
Yeah, actually, it is.
well, I mean that's
Kamen Rider
where I
Furry.
want to give the that's where I want to give the 3D anime credit is that they are giving Sayori more to do, even though she's like on her deathbed. She's still doing a lot. Like she's still interfering a lot, and she's still a a big presence. And I kind of hate to say it, but like I kind of like the 3D version of Sayori just a little bit better than the anime version. I feel like she's a more important character, like a more centralized character than she was in
Mm-hmm.
the anime a lot of the time. And not to say that you should one is going to be better than the other. Anybody can enjoy whatever they want to enjoy. But it was just
Fair
a
enough.
thought
Fair
that I
enough.
had that because they also did make it a point to say that they wanted powerful women representation in that show. So that makes sense that they're doing that. And we're also comparing something that came out in 2021 to something that came out in, the
1988.
80s. So eh, it's not a fair comparison, but yeah, she does end up in that damsel role in the anime a lot, and I don't know, I just don't feel like a lot of the times it's warranted. Yes.
Well, it's because like a lot of times what ends up happening is they need like what they call in movies. They need a ticking clock, and they just don't know how to do a ticking clock good. So they usually just say, okay, why don't we just put Athena in peril and see and just go from there and just like you can do a lot more with this, like and like we have something, and it is interesting because yeah, she's a little bit more proactive, and she is like trying to tell like Delver, hey, fuck off, like I'm the guy who takes care of the Greek of the Greek world. So like, look, I know what I'm doing, so you can't replace me and stuff, and yada yada yada. So she stands up on her own two legs here, and when she gets like eventually taken out, it's not because like she was caught like in a moment of vulnerability. It's just that this guy is that powerful. Okay,
And I,
so
I
okay, so you appreciate it. Okay, so after that, so they all in typical Saint Seiya fashion, they all start sensing Sayori's cosmos like being sucked away, and I wrote down here, uh, okay, if things were ended up things would end up a lot quicker if in the Saint Seiya world if Shun can do what he did in this particular scene, which is he used his chains to actually like to like see
I know what
himself
you're
to
talking.
see what's going on, to see what's going on with Athena, and he just like gets a glimpse. I'm like, if you could do this, if you had this ability all this time, we could have saved ourselves a lot of like headaches.
I put on there that he was playing Spider Man.
Now I
Shun was
can't
playing
stop hearing the
Spider-Man.
theme.
Oh
Spider
god, I
Shun.
Spider
I love
Shun,
that part.
Spider Shun.
I mean, it makes sense because they're retractable, and he has two of them, so he could easily do the swinging from building to building thing. He could do that pretty easily.
Yeah, he could.
Someone edited the 60 Spider-Man with Shun.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
god!
like
And then the one where they're pointing at each other, but it's Shun and Sean.
Oh.
Did I break you? Are you okay?
yes, you broke me. God damn it. Okay, so yeah, so they get caught wind. So like yeah, they caught wind that shit's going down. One of like, we get to see Shun versus Uller, and I wrote down here like the God Warriors don't give a shit about the honor of not using any weapons. This guy just comes up at him with a sword and starts fucking around with him.
And like obliterating his chains too, which used to be a big deal, but I guess now who cares? Like,
I have I have a comment on that.
I guess go
Okay,
on.
right now just on that specific fact, but I do want to go on a rant after you guys give your thoughts on Shun's fight. Okay, I do like that fact. What you just mentioned, Ramses, actually makes a lot of sense because okay, that is the story and that's the way that Kurumada decided to adapt like this idea of in a way Greek warriors, like being able to use this energy to fight like with their fists in the name of justice. It makes a
Mhm.
lot of sense for the characters of the saints not to use any weapons because they're supposed to be noble and honorable and basically people that you can look up to. And one of the easiest ways is usually, the avoidance of using weapons. And in that regard, I think that it was a very good way to adapt Norse mythology onto here because Norse mythology is quite different. It's very violent.
Yeah.
It's a lot about glory. It's a lot about battle. It's a lot about warrior gods and proving their might. So the idea
I
of
mean,
them having weapons.
Valhalla is literally eat, kill, repeat until you for the rest of eternity.
Yeah, so the idea of them having weapons actually makes a lot of sense, and they shouldn't particularly care about, well, they do care about honor, like in Norse mythology, but like these particular enemies, the idea of them not thinking that this would affect their honor is something that I find interesting. It's just a shame that it didn't get developed too much, but yeah, them having weapons makes sense to me. That's what I want
All
to say.
right. Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, we cut to that fight's happening, and then we cut to Shiryu. He finds this day glow orange dude that's totally not Hyoga, and oops, it's Hyoga, and he's like,
Every time you say Dayglow, I think Hyoga is like an e-girl when you say that.
Oh god.
So yeah, what I find interesting is like, so like after that, like Hyoga's like, I don't know what he's doing. Like it looks like he's trying to give him like a handshake. He's giving, and then it's like, at first I'm like, is he giving you like one of those handshakes that's like crushing your arm, like you know what I mean? It's like, but no, it's like he's freezing his arm, and like holy shit.
He's like fucking asshole.
Yeah. So apparently we figured out like something's up with Yoga, and so Shiryu and Hyoga start fighting. And I wrote down here 22 minutes, and Shiryu is already armorless. That's gotta be that's. I think that's like the longest we've seen him without his armor.
Well, I have to say that the two things about this fight made me incredibly happy. Number one is that it wasn't just a clear like power dynamic thing. Like he had to be creative with how he fought because for basically what happens is Hyoga like they kind of roll down to this area where there's a bunch of water and Hyoga freezes his legs so he can't move and Shiryu decides to use his I can never pronounce it, but
Loshan, the Rising Dragon.
yeah, the Rising Dragon. Uh, he decides to use that, but he uses the ice that Hyoga is like sending his way to like make an ice dragon to attack him with. So he kind of uses his power against him, which was super creative. And the other thing that I like is that they finally brought back the freaking tattoo on his back that was so incredibly important at the beginning of the series, and then literally never gets mentioned ever again.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, it probably does. But again, I said at the beginning of this, forgive me if I'm wrong with remembering things.
Yeah, don't worry.
But like it was, I just remember at the beginning of the show, it was such an important thing for like his dragon and it fading, and then bringing it back here just felt like a really nice callback to the beginning of the series.
All right. Any thoughts so far, Benjas?
Yeah, the fight between Shiryu and Hyoga is definitely one of the highlights of this movie for me. Not only because of what I mentioned previously in my history with this scene and almost going insane, but also the fact that it is so well done. Because the way that Kevin put it is very right. Like this fight is not just like hitting each other for the sake of hitting each other. It involves a lot of creativity on both behalf of more on Hyoga's part. Ironically, now that he's fighting dirty. Like he basically tricks Shiryu so that he can freeze his arm, which in the series, Shiryu's right arm is his most powerful weapon. So taking that out right from the beginning was a very smart thing to do, especially by taking advantage of Shiryu's ingenuity in this situation. Then the way that they fight is the choreography is very nice. Like I really like how they fight and how they move in their fight. Like I thought it was very well executed. I really like their.
My one complaint is that at the end of the fight, Shiryu just lays face down in a puddle.
Oh,
man's dead. Man
yeah!
is dead. That is how you die.
Yeah, that actually I was actually forgetting because I did thought of that when I was watching the movies. Like that's the one thing that also that's and again the fault of Toei. They have a fetish of fucking trying to drown Shiryu, and I don't know why. In every single fucking movie, they try to drown him, and he remains like with his face looking at the water for like more than 15 minutes. Like, how are you not dead?
Yeah, he should have drowned a long time ago.
Oh yeah. So okay, so I'm confused about this. So because I don't know if I wrote down. So Shun takes out Okla, right?
No.
No.
No, okay. So because I wrote down here in my notes, right on cue, Iki's here, but I remember. Okay, so Iki's the one that takes him out, right?
Yes.
If that's the case. Okay, that's I should be like as much as I put down my notes, I gotta take better notes. Keep that in mind. So yeah. So in typical fashion, we're about 30 minutes in, and Shun's in trouble. Would have thought it's fucking Iki takes him out really
Yeah.
quick, and then here comes, and then I wrote down here, great rung KOF bait, KRF bait, and
Well,
then he does this.
No, I was
Go
just
on.
gonna say, like, my notes literally, I put, of course, Iki comes in to save Shun again. Like,
Yeah.
this anime has like a vendetta against Shun being able to shine by himself.
Well, he does something
Yes.
later. Yeah,
Yeah.
something happen later.
But still,
So
May I go on my rant now because it's
Yes.
a
yeah,
perfect
okay, it's
time.
all you. Go off, Benkas. It's all you.
Okay. Okay. This is unfortunately Shun. When it comes to Shun, Shun is known amongst the community as Toei's punching bag. And I want to be very clear when I say Toei's punching bag, because the character
Mhm.
himself is fucking magnificent. Like if you read just the manga, you realize just how the importance and just how good of a character Shun is. Because all those elements that people love about the character, they're there in the original story. But for some fucking reason that I just cannot help but I cannot comprehend, and I never will. Toei, for some reason, decided to make this character. They're like when they want to bully someone, it's like that's the character that they immediately point towards. Because for the love of my life, I cannot understand how Toei just keeps like they make Shun as fucking useless and as fucking stupid as possible in every single original piece that Toei makes, even to this day. And unfortunately, even though this movie is probably the one where he's the least useless, he is still useless because he does almost absolutely nothing, and he gets defeated in less than he gets defeated almost instantly, and he does not defeat a single opponent, and he doesn't do that in any of the movies. But okay, keeping it in this one again, just the same thing. He doesn't do anything. He gets defeated incredibly easy for Iki to come and rescue him. And that is something that I fucking despise because I actually like the character of Shun. And it's because of Toei Animation that a lot of people actually have him in this horrible light because they only took what the anime gave them, and it's not what the character actually is. Randover.
All right. So yeah, after that, after that, like so it's Iki and Oklar, and like literally this fight is just pretty much is like he uses his Phoenix Genkaden, his Phoenix Illusion Fist, and I wrote down here, oh yeah, this guy's all some major shit. And he literally does. He thought he killed Iki, but then he got himself impaled, and I wrote down here, there's some Fist of the North Star shit have I ever seen in my life.
well, I mean, like, it's like not only is he a big man like Cassius, but he also kind of dies in a super similar way to Cassius, just like impaling himself. Although this one wasn't on purpose, so it was just very weird. It felt recycled.
Yeah, and like I said, like I felt like the way that he got killed, I was like, oh wow, I've seen this, and it's not from this anime. So yeah, after that, like Rung is so like he goes to comfort Shun, and he's like hey, are you okay? This and that, blah blah blah. So I give him this much, and like at least Iki's like at least is a caring dude, and at this point, so he's already off his like angst mode. But after that, Rung comes back and he pushes everybody down the abyss, and I wrote down here, so for once, Shun actually did something, actually saved Iki for once, because soon after we get to see him like hanging on, like getting Iki and him being still alive. So it's like, yay!
Yeah, because he was like dangling off the side of the cliff for like a solid 3 or 4 minutes, just dangling there waiting. And
Yeah.
then he finally got to come up and he helped save Iki there at the end.
All right, so after that, we cut to Seiya. He's actually like he was already well on his way. He's like the freshest warrior, and so he's so fresh that like he meets up with Loki, and literally there's a fight with Loki. Loki does his special ability, which I actually really like. It's like this wolf thing, and it's like again, plays off totally to his mythology that he he's connected to wolves and stuff like that. So I appreciate that they reference that in his special ability. And like he says a line that like I had to, and when I watch it again in Spanish, it's just like, how fucking stupid are you, Loki? He says, and I will quote, yeah, because he says, and I will quote, why are like if you use using the same technique twice is never gonna work. What does Seiya do again? He does the same fucking thing and beats him.
Well, the problem is that's something that's already been taught in the show, and so Seiya also knows that. So they both attacked each other at the same time. So Seiya most likely, like it wasn't explicitly said, but Seiya most likely just saw how to get around his attack again.
Yeah.
So like he used his own advice against him, basically.
Well, to be fair, he does the rolling crush at the end as well. So it's like there's something different, but he takes him out like effectively using the same thing he did before. So it's like, all right.
Yeah, it came out
Seiya over here.
Yeah, it came out funny just because of the timing. It is one of those things like you can question that because on the one hand it's like it's very situational when that information is useful and when it isn't. But it's like usually the answer is like when they're fighting an enemy that they need to defeat, that's when it's active. And once the enemy is trying to pull that off, the characters like they're able to rise their cosmos beyond the ability of the enemy, and that's why they defeat him. It basically goes like that.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. So like they get caught up with what Elker and Ugler, and Ugler says a line that's like that like, I couldn't stop laughing at it. He says, "Oh yeah, all those guys, all those guys that are working with me, they're like underlings. That they mean nothing to me." I wrote there, "Damn man, thought we're tossing all of his people underneath the bus."
Just collectively threw the whole fucking castle under the bus.
Oh yeah. So like they start fighting, and I wrote down here, rare sight to see that the final boss, see the final boss actually have a fight, which is interesting because like most of the time it's usually like they have like a press X to win thing, but they're actually like this guy's actually putting up a decent fight against Seiya and everybody else. So it's like that's really interesting to see.
I was disappointed, and I think I was disappointed because I misunderstood the timeline of things. Now that I know the timeline of this, I kind of get why what I wanted to happen didn't happen.
Okay.
What I wanted to happen, because basically they start fighting and slowly Big Boss Man starts to get the advantage over Seiya, and he basically just shatters his cloth. And so Seiya's stuck without a cloth. Hyoka's in there at some point, but the main focus is Big Boss Man trying to destroy him. And I was hoping that he would get the Odin armor here.
Oh.
Because I was hoping that would kind of like the Odin armor would choose him over the actual person from Asgard to show that how fucked up he is, and then that he would see the error of his ways and be like, oh my god, if even the Lord Odin has abandoned me, I'm doing the wrong thing. Like that's the route that I wish they had gone, but instead it was the Sagittarius armor.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it was a delight at the time because it's not the most common armor to see, the most common cloth in the show. So it's not like every single episode he's pulling this out, but it is kind of a trope that this just shows up and helps him as like plot armor, literal plot armor, at different places throughout the show. So I much more would have preferred if the Odin armor had chosen him over the guy whose name I'm continuing to forget.
Iodios.
No. The big
Iodia.
guy.
Oh, Dolber.
Dolber. I wish that like because he kept saying that he was like they kept praising Odin, and like Odin is very obviously like the end all be all for this group of people. So I just think it would have been a huge slap in the face to him if the armor had chosen Seiya and he had gotten to see that with his own eyes, because Seiya eventually does get to wear that armor for a time.
Yes, he does.
So that's what I was hoping would happen, but whatever.
Any thoughts so far, Becos? Alrighty then. So I know. All right. So after that, so like yeah, it's like they have this huge fight, and when I wrote down there because like he does that special attack like Odin's shield, and I wrote down here he's sending Seiya to the Shadow Realm, and then afterwards and then afterwards he comes back and it's like wow that was fucking quick because like he just suddenly comes back and I'm like oh that's a short-lived trip. And then I wrote down here because like I started seeing everybody fighting, and it's like so everybody eventually gets to the fight, and so what I think It's Iki, Shun, and Seiya, and I don't know where the heck Shiryu is. I presume. Was he in the
He
fight?
like climbs up towards the end because it kept cutting away from the fight to show the rest of the gang like stumbling towards him. So I'm pretty sure it showed Shiryu.
All
he
right, all
was
right.
he was scrolling his way back to like where the main fight is taking place, but if I memory recalls, he doesn't actually make it. Like I think he gets there like at the very end when everything's about to conclude.
I wrote down something for that later, but yeah. So some Hyoga comes back and he's all like, and then Nober's like, aha, my most my most loyal warrior. Finish this Greek warrior off, and then he points his diamond dust at Lober, and it's like, wait, no, and I wrote down there, fooled you. So, but that wasn't enough, and that wasn't enough for him because so he takes him out, and I wrote down here, and now the press X to win button is here, which is the Sagittarius armor, the Sagittarius clock.
Yeah.
And here's the funny, I wrote down here too, reuse the animation from the first movie, because I noticed when he puts on the clock, it's the same thing that the same thing he did when it looks like the same it looks the same way that he did, like it's exactly the same animation from the first movie.
Oof.
So yeah. So yeah, it's proved that his armor is really cool, yada yada yada. It's the greatest thing in the universe. And he tells him to take his arrow, and he's about to finish him off. But then plot twist, he tells him, if you kill me, you're not gonna be able to save Athena. And
Yeah, because he basically says that you're not gonna figure out how to get her soul back because he stole her soul, her essence, whatever you want to call it. And he's like, I'm not gonna tell you, and you can't, like, if you kill me, she'll be lost forever. But then Freyr shows up and he's like, you're not the only one that knows things around here, bucko. And then Harakiri's himself on top of the statue, and that works, I guess. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, he basically he sacrificed himself in order to be able to destroy Odin's statue that had been corrupted and become how did he express it? Like filled with evil, basically.
I wrote down here, I'm sorry, Freyr, but that statue's coming back later.
They're gonna rebuild.
Okay, so no headshot, but the arrow does win again. So yeah, because he shoots him in the arrow, and that's how they win. And, from there, the Yarushil tree pops up, and then like Freya's there to explain what's going on, and yen.
Yeah, in true Saint Seiya movie fashion, it just fucking ends. Like little resolution or follow up with anybody. Just the bad guy's dead. The end.
I wrote down here. So Shiryu, Hyoga, Shun, and Iki are dead.
Shiryu should be dead canonically many times.
Yeah, but actually, this movie.
Anyways.
This movie is probably like I'll give him this, despite the fact that it does the same thing as the other movies, exactly as you described it. At least this one, ironically, has like the happiest ending out of all of them. Because think about all the movies, they end up with something getting completely and utterly destroyed, and them just standing there, right? But at least in this one, not only did they make everything, not only did they make grass grow, literally, they also brought in the Tree of Life, Yggdrasil. And they're all smiling and happy and walking in the grass at the end. Like that's the ending credits animation. So at least it's the most unique out of all the endings from the movies, despite the fact that it is the same thing. But at least visually, it was the most unique out of all of them.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You pronounce that name because I've been seeing that name in media since like the PlayStation 2 RPG era and have never even tried to pronounce it.
Yggdrasil?
Yeah, it's got too many letters, Y's, and not for me.
All right, so yeah, that's pretty much the entire movie right there. So, I know I know something popped up there really quick, but because like any thoughts up to this point?
Yeah, basically, I think that the animation itself is absolutely fantastic. Oh, okay, one thing that we should probably mention: if anybody is photosensitive, you should probably tread carefully when watching Saint Seiya in general, particularly this movie. Like they have some crazy visuals there. But okay, that being said, in general, the animation it's actually fantastic. It's probably one of the cases where the animation itself is one of the pluses that makes like all those nuances and things that we can nitpick and tear apart in criticism. Like it kind of compensates for all that. And the music, man, the music is like when if you don't pay too much attention or if you just look at it at face value, it's like it's already great music, but like hearing the soundtrack for this music that also gets used for the Asgard arc, I have a much more I have much more of an appreciation for this movie now after hearing the music, because unfortunately many of the pieces it got, especially the ending piece, that was like the ending song for the ending piece that they played during the Pegasus Fantasy concert, and hearing that live, man, it's just, oh, you have no idea what it was like that was like the closest thing that I can describe to getting to heaven. It's like it was amazing.
It's very, very cool. So yeah, before we close things out, I want to have a really quick discussion. It's going to be a Ramses and Benjas discussion right here, because like as I said before, I watched this movie twice. I decided to watch this movie. I watched this movie once on Amazon Prime, because it's on Amazon Prime. It's subtitled. It's there, so I'm paying for it. I might as well use it. So yeah, so I watched it. And then I was like, some things didn't click with me. So I'm gonna watch it again in Spanish. And I watched it again in Spanish, and and we were discussing this off air a little bit, but like I guess we can talk a little bit more about it. It's like that dub was weird. That dub is weird.
Yeah.
That dub, and it's not because of the inconsistencies. Because I've already gotten used to like weird inconsistencies in like any dub. I'm already automatically assuming that in any dub that gets thrown, whether it's whether it's in English, Spanish, or whatever, something's gonna get lost. So I'm already accustomed to this point. But I'm more weird about the fact it's like think about the only voice actor they can only get back from the original series was Seiya's voice actor, Jesus Herrero. Everybody else sounds sounds off. And I mentioned the fact that's like the guy that got the voice Loki. That guy sounds like I don't know. Are you familiar with this? Are you familiar with this guy named Tom Watts?
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he has a really unique voice. He talks a little bit like this.
Yeah, I know the type of voice that you're talking about.
So that's the voice they decided to give. That's the voice they decided to give Loki. And all I can think of is like, wow, like where the fuck did they find Mexican Tom Watts here, man? For God's sakes! And it's like I said, like that like and for the longest time I was like, because I knew for a fact that what they did for the most part with the movies, they had a different dubbing. If I'm not mistaken, right? They had a different team that dubbed the movies. Am I correct on that one?
Yes.
So yeah,
that is apparently it has to do with syndicates. I don't really know too much about it. Like, I'm not a dubbing expert. There are people that are more knowledgeable in that field than me. But what I do know is that the voice actors usually they belong to like one or several syndicates, particularly when they're voicing like a series. And sometimes when the production for those movies used to come in, like the company that decided to take upon the rights to do the movie, that like sometimes because of like it's weird because they have like contractual alliances with some of those syndicates. So for example, the voice actor of Iki belonged to a different syndicate than the one that belonged to a syndicate that did not have an alliance with the company that brought in the movie. So that's the reason why he didn't participate, because it was like a conflict of interest, and that was very common. I'm pretty sure that still happens, but I don't know how it's handled nowadays. But back in the day, that's why like you would have like different voice actors doing some of the classic characters and not their original voice actors, because sometimes there would be like a conflict of interest with the syndicate, and that's why they brought in somebody else entirely.
fair enough. Yeah, it's the same thing that happens here because, like, for example, there's like different dubbing groups. We have the ones in Texas, we have the ones in Los Angeles, we have the ones in Toronto, and like the most famous example was with Dragon Ball here in the United States, because at first it was actually dubbed in Canada, and then afterwards they switch over to what we now know as like the Funimation team, which is the one we associate with Texas, and then the other group is also Biff Bang Zoom, who does their stuff in Los Angeles. So this started to sound the same thing, where it's like a lot of times with a lot of dubs, it's like different people will do a different dub altogether because like that because like they're contractually obligated to they're contractually obligated to do a lot of they're contractually obligated by a different company to do it. So that's why it's like a lot of times a lot of companies will do like one voice, we'll do one version, and then they'll do another version down the road or something like that with like different voice actors and stuff like that. So yeah, so that makes kind of sense that they would do that. So yeah, I mean, it was just weird because like they picked totally the most wrongest voices for like everybody for the most part. So
Yeah,
yeah, but
yeah, it is a very weird dub for that movie in particular.
but for the
Must be
most part,
nice
like
getting dubs of the Tetrary stuff and not just the main line. Must be nice.
mm, well, we can only hope. We can only hope. We can only hope that
Having to
it's like.
watch it with subtitles like somebody who knows how to read.
Funny enough,
All
I
right,
actually
so
watched the movie. But just quick commercial. I actually watched the movie with subtitles as well because I have the Blu-ray. If you are in the
oh
US, if you are in the US, please. Actually, that Blu-ray came out in the US, but it never actually came here. I had to to buy it from eBay. So if you
oh
have the
wow.
possibility to getting the collection for the 4 movies, because it's one Blu-ray with the 4 movies, like exclude the only movie that's not there. It's from the
Tenkai Hen.
original animated. Yes, Tenkai Hen's the only one that's not there, but the other ones are in that Blu-ray. So if you have the opportunity, do look it out. It is definitely worth the money. Okay, commercial over.
I have the 2 DVD set from before the Blu-ray came out.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Same company, Discotheque.
Yes, it's right now on Amazon. You can get it if you're in the United States. You can get it for $23. So and like I said, also if you're, it's also streaming everywhere here in the United States. It's like I said, it's streaming on Amazon. It's streaming through Retro Crush. It's streaming through Tubi. So if you have access to all those places, you can watch those there as well. Like I said, when I first watched it, I actually watched it on Amazon because it was available for me there, and it was the most easy to go watch it at. And like I said, like if I had to go, I had to go later to like look for the Mexican version, the Mexican Latino version of the movie because I was morbidly curious and, well, as they say, curiosity killed the cat. So while we're wrapping things up here, Benjas, any final thoughts on the movie?
Yeah, it's probably one of the most visually astounding movies. It's definitely one of the things where like everything else complements it very well. The story in itself is actually quite interesting, despite some of the toy shortcomings, I'm gonna call them. But you can easily ignore those just by watching this movie. It's visually beautiful. Like it's probably one of the most creative, visually speaking, in terms of scenery and of how the scenes are directed and planned out. It's definitely probably the most visually stunning out of all the movies. Like I think that now that I've rewatched it, the movie is just absolutely astounding and fantastic. The plot itself is good. Like it's nothing maybe out of the ordinary, but it is very very good for anime movie standards. So yeah, I really liked and enjoyed watching this movie. I'm probably gonna watch it more often now from now on. Now that I've have more a better appreciation for it than I used to have. So I fully recommend you watch it if you have the chance.
Kamen Rider Furry, your final thoughts on the movie?
I I have a love-hate relationship with this era of anime, specifically movies, because this comes from the era where they were called movies, but really they were just like slightly extended episodes so that they could be aired or not aired. They could be shown together with 2 or 3 other properties. Like at the beginning, you mentioned that there was 2 or 3 other movies packaged together, so like you could take an afternoon, like 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon, and go watch 3, 4 anime movies back to back. That
Yeah,
was
and,
super
and
fun.
it's
And
yeah, because
I
also like you just said, it's something where it's like you would watch them, but it's like you can spend it after you watch like 3 or 4 movies, but it doesn't feel like you spent like watching 3 or 4 movies.
right. And they did a lot with like Super Sentai, and like you said earlier, Kamen Rider obviously used to do that as well.
It was
A
packed with
lot
the
of
Kamen Rider
anime did
movie.
it. Like Yu Hakusho did one that most people don't know because the other movie outshadows it because the other movie is an actual fucking movie.
Hmm.
Anyway, I'm trying not to
Well,
get mad, but my what I'm trying to say is that the I feel like a lot of really great stories were wasted on these smaller ventures. This was a good story, and it kind of had like an alternate reality version with the arc in the anime, but not really because it's not the same plot and it didn't have most of the same characters, and it's really its own thing, like we've said previously in this episode. So it frustrates me so much that I really do think this story was good. I really enjoyed most of the characters in it for how briefly they were shown, and I want to know more about them. But it fell into that era where a movie was just a glorified, just like longer episode, basically. And so it felt inherently rushed because they wanted to do as much as they could in this 40-minute time span. And it unfortunately, I just can't. I don't know. I can't put into words how I really feel because I like it, but at the same time, I think I like it because of what I feel like it could have been, not because what it is. Because what it is right now is kind of a rushed mess. But I saw so much
Mm,
promise and good character designs and good music and good animation, and I just feel like if this had been even 20 minutes longer, they could have made a really, really, really great story with this. But we ended up with like the abridged version.
Mhm. So for me, I still have a like I think I discussed this when we talked about the first movie that I still have a love for the next movie that we're gonna talk about, but I don't think we're gonna talk about that movie because I don't want to touch that movie until we're done actually talking about the series. Whatever happens first, either we get done with this, either the CGI series gets done or we're actually done catching up with the anime. So whatever happens first, I want to go watch it again. I want to watch that. I want to watch the movie before we progress because it does lead in a lot of stuff that leads in from that movie gets put into this to the next movie. I still really enjoy that movie. I still say that's like the best looking out of all of them. I still say it has like all the best. That's still my favorite of all the four these four movies. But like having watched this again for this show and having not watched it since like '96 when I first watched it, like on like when I first watched it on VHS in Mexico. I have a new appreciation for the movie, and I really do appreciate it. I do think this is like the better of these movies, in my opinion. I do think like after watching this movie, I do believe that this is actually like I said, this is not the fourth movie. I don't know if it held up or not. No, I mean not the fourth movie. I saw the fourth movie. It's actually, but no, the third movie, which is I think, which I still think is like one of my favorite ones. But I wonder, but again, I haven't watched that in a while now, and and that is actually a proper like 90-minute movie. So if we are to do this, it's going to be like a longer movie. Don't worry about that, Kamen Rider Furry. But yeah, so going back to the final point. Um, going back to the point I was going at is that the this movie I felt like I've changed over. I felt a little bit warmer towards it over the years, and I still don't know why I didn't like it when it was first airing, but like to this day, I'm like still trying to like rattle my brain. Just like same thing with Benjas. It's like I don't know why I didn't like the second movie when I was. Well, we kind of I didn't know why we called. I didn't know why I didn't like that movie initially, but now I kind of have a new appreciation for it. So yeah, I mean that sums it up for like what we're. So that sums it up for like everything for this episode right here. So why don't we call it a night here, guys? Benjas, why don't
yep.
you go first with like your promotions?
Already, I actually have something new to promote. Well, first of all, you can find me on my Twitter. That's my main social media site at the moment. It's at Mexican Geek 502. I primarily like that's my main account, but I post a lot of Saint Seiya stuff there. I retweet a lot of art. I retweet a lot of news. I post amusing and interesting information about the series from time to time. So if you're interested in that, please be sure to check it out. Also, I have two projects that I'm working on, Saint Seiya related. That one of them I've already started working on. So hopefully by the end of the month or maybe mid-November, I can announce something related to that in the near future. And the other is I actually created an Instagram account. The username that I am using it's Crateris Benjas. It's CraterisBenjas, and I intend to. I've actually been drawing as of recent, so I intend to make Saint Seiya illustrations and post them there in the future. So if you want to give me a follow there, eventually I'll be posting my art on that account. Thank you.
All right. All right, all right. We'll me and Conrad Furry will see if we can. We're definitely gonna follow you in that case, because like we both have our Instagrams and like what you're. So it's like if you decide to do this follow if you decide to follow me and Conrad Furry, you're gonna be just bombarded with toys. More so, like well we're both equally. I think we both post like a lot of toys. But like you post the Conrad Furry post dolls. I post more action figures and like other stuff.
Well,
Okay, so
the dolls have been mostly on my story
yeah.
because I didn't get the warmest reception when I asked if people would want to see them like as actual Instagram posts. So dolls are
Mhm.
mostly on my story because I've been obsessed with Monster High dolls lately. Sorry, and Rainbow High to a much less extent, but you can find me on Instagram at Kamen Rider Furry. Like we said previously, that's where you'll find my collectibles and stuff like that. I do have a few of my Saint Seiya collectibles posted on there. I probably should put more. It's mainly because I work from home, when I'm sitting there with downtime, I look over, I'm like, oh, that's a cool figure, and then I'll take a picture of it and post it on Instagram. That's how much thought I put into my Instagram. My Twitter is also at Kamen Rider Furry, and you can follow me there and just see my hilarious quips. I have not been posting a ton lately just because I've been working so much, but vacation coming up, which will be fun. You can also follow Ancient Anime. We just released an episode with my best friend, or one of my best friends, where we talked about the Fatal Fury movie and the two OVAs that came before it, and that was so much fun. Um, it it was really really interesting, because, and the only reason I'm saying this is because she kind of makes it known to everybody when she introduces it. But that was my first time working on the podcast with somebody openly trans, and it was really
Okay.
cool to see that perspective of how characters are interpreted and story beats are interpreted. And it was a really cool experience, and I'm so glad that more people are getting to meet my friend Rika, because she is really really fun. And I if you listen to the episode, it's just us acting like we normally act when we talk with each other around all the time.
Oh
But you can
God.
find that at Ancient Anime Pod on Twitter and Instagram as well. I do some funny edits where I edit our faces onto things. The one with Rob from the Saturday Morning Squad was probably my favorite one, because he didn't give me a picture, so I just had to say, "This is Rob."
Yeah,
Oh,
it's just a blank picture. It's just like one of those like
it's
blank.
it's literally the MySpace like blank profile picture.
Yeah, it's just I love it. I love it. That's like, but so
Because he
yeah,
didn't
you
give
also
me
did it.
anything.
But
But no, but yeah, you can find me there. And before we end this podcast, I just want to say that I'm never gonna be able to watch this movie ever again without imagining baby Benjas just like on the floor, upset about Hyoga being evil. Like, I will never be able to watch this movie normally ever again.
I'm glad that now you have something to think about when you rewatch this movie.
It's just, I'm just gonna have like, and to be perfectly clear, I've never seen a photo of what you look like, so I'm just imagining this like almost faceless generic child just crying at the television screen.
That should be my new avatar.
yeah, but so yeah, that is I'm not gonna have that image. I gotta have to find a way to wipe that image out of my brain. But I have something. I have some things. I got some things I got to promote here. Some very important things. So I think I should have discussed on the top of the show, but we discussed this on our last show. But I think we can discuss this. I can discuss this briefly, and then I have something to announce concerning this. As you know, I worked on a Saint Seiya game, a fan game by Zaichi Games. I worked on the English translation of the game. You may have heard about this game. That you may have heard of me talk about it last episode, but literally last week, not even last week, like a couple of days ago, like I want to say like Thursday of this week, which means like the 6th or 7th, he dropped the game officially on on Itch.io. I'll link the game on our show notes. And all the links to all the stuff that we've been up to and all the stuff that we discussed. Here's the interesting news. I secured an interview with Zaichi, and we're gonna have an interview for talking about the game and like the process of making the game and all that stuff for the next episode. So be on the lookout for our next episode, where not only are we going to discuss the last remaining episodes of this current block of the CGI show, but we're also going to have an interview with Zaichi, and we're going to talk about the game itself. So if you haven't checked out the game yet, it's a really awesome game. It's a Game Boy Color game, and it's a really fun throwback to like not just it's not just a fun throwback for Saint Seiya fans, but it's also a great game for like retro enthusiasts, like because it is kind of the kind of game that you would like find in like a ROM set, and you'd be like, oh, I don't know what this Knights of the Zodiac game is, but this game's fun. And that's kind of the approach I had with the game, where when I translated it, where it's like it's a kind of game where it's like if you had no idea if this was based on something, you still can get enjoyment out of it, even if you don't know anything about Saint Seiya. I have another podcast. I have the Saturday Morning Squadron. I recorded a very lengthy episode with my friend Jay. We were supposed to do something in that episode, but like we just went off the rails so much that episode that we just said screw it. It's just 3 hours of us just talking about everything. because we were supposed to have like a discussion, but like so that didn't pan out. So instead, it's just the three of us just talking in circles about different things. And our next episode, which should be out around the same time that this following episode, episode 23. That episode around the time that episode gets posted, there should be one that comes out before, which will be episode 14, which will be our Halloween episode where I join my friend Wiggy. She is a horror game streamer. We're just gonna talk about horror. We're gonna talk about horror stuff like horror movies, horror video games, horror everything. So it's like we're gonna have like a horror themed episode. So if you into horrors, give that episode a listen. It will be out, I think, by the time before the next episode comes out. You can find that at our on the website, which is satamsquad.tumblr.com. Again, the address is satamsquad.tumblr.com. We finally secured a Tumblr for that, so you can listen to all the episodes there. And of course, if you want to listen to the show and you want to contribute to the show and you want to find out more information about the show, we have a website, which is stcosmocast.com. Again, the address is stcosmocast.com. It will be also in our show notes. And you can find out information. You can find out show information, listen to the episodes on our website, and learn a little bit about the host, and learn a little bit about what we've been up to. Listen to previous episodes, and also very important, we also have you can also submit all your questions there with us as well. So you can check out the email on the website, or you can email us directly at questions@stcosmocast.com. Again, it's questions@stcosmocast.com, and we'll read it on the air. You can also add us at stcosmocast on Twitter, and and you can get your word out. Also, you get the words in. Also, if you want to get something in the show, or you can use the hashtag #KeepBurningThatCosmos, all one word, and we'll search that and we'll respond to it on the show as well. So there's a lot of ways that you can get a hold of us. There's a lot of ways there's a lot of things we're promoting. There's a lot of things that we're doing we're doing different things, and I'm glad that we're doing all these different things. So yeah. So with that said, guys, thank you so much for listening. For Kamen Rider Furry, for Benjas, I am Ramses, and I'm here to tell you, keep burning that cosmos. I will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.